clowns. It's really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Is that you?
That is Graphic God, and that's the perfect way to open up the show. So everyone, welcome to a very special episode of Four Guys with Quarters interview with Jimmy Palmiotti, somebody who I have looked up to for a long time. In the comic universe, his stuff is just fantastic. We have an amazing panel as well. I'm going to introduce the panel first and then let the guests introduce themselves and talk about themselves. So we have 3-Bit, as you know him on Twitter. Mario.
Hey.
What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. I am just, today is a very relaxed day for me. Then I'll go back to animating later on tonight and hanging out with you guys. So it's going to be a really fun show, I think.
It sounds awesome, and probably because your boss might be listening. I don't know who that might be. But we also have Mav, Fun Speculation. What is going on, man?
I'm freaking pumped for this. This is like a childhood wishes come true day, I think. Just mine is blown what we're getting to do right now. So shout out to everybody for watching. Anybody that watches this afterwards on demand. Hello and enjoy what's about to happen because I think it's going to be freaking incredible.
We have a very special guest as well, Paris Lockhart, who works on Team Xbox and xCloud and also runs one of the largest Marvel Cinematic Universe Facebook groups on Facebook. What's going on?
It's good. It's good, man. This is amazing. Pleasure to meet everyone. I've seen a lot of your work, James and Paul, so I'm excited to talk with you both. And of course, everyone on the stream. I've been following you on Twitter and this is going to be great. So thanks.
Awesome. It's awesome to have you here. And we also have PK. What's going on, man?
Welcome to the most electrifying channel in all entertainment. It's your boy PK. Glad to be here. Glad to get into this. Welcome to all of our guests and special guest panel member. Love to have this conversation. Looking forward to it. I'm a big ass nerd myself, so I'm glad to be graced with such presence. Let's get it.
And Jimmy, I've looked up to you for so long, man. Like the work that you and Amanda do is just it's phenomenal. It is mind-blowing, it is creative, very talented. I grew up with comic books for a very long time, and there's a few that I've always looked up to, and you're one of the greats up there for me, man. So I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell everyone about yourself.
I think we should end it there because it's only downhill from here, man. After that intro, it's like, uh-oh, I'm gonna destroy this man. It's great to be here, guys. Such a good group, and it's good to see my buddy Paul too. It's just, thank you for that, man. I mean, it's flattering. It's funny because I'm in it, right? So I'm not thinking about what I did in the past, but all I'm worrying about is today's gig and tomorrow. But it is nice to kind of talk to people that read the stuff because, a lot of times we're so in our own heads, we just do the work and, we think somebody reads it. Some people just bag it. I have no idea until I get to talk to people and say, oh my God, they actually read the book. I should run away now. But no, thank you for that. That was very sweet of you and really happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for coming on. And also to Mr. Paul Jenkins, who is a very special surprise panel member, thanks to Mario. Thank you for coming on, Paul.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. I don't have PK's patter. I can't really go like, hey, man. But I will say that I do have a British accent, so I feel that evens things out.
That's right.
Yeah, and Paul is very special guest from all of his Marvel history, comic history, history doing movie stuff and everything. So to have both Paul and Jimmy on here together, which they happen to know each other as well because they work in the same universe, right? is just absolutely freaking incredible. And I hope we hear some interesting conversation. Maybe we'll get some inside info that we've never heard before. I'm ecstatic to have both of you guys here.
You know, I was a fan of Paul's, and then I was lucky when because Joe Quesada and I did Marvel Knights. I was lucky enough to hire him, and that's when I got to, we hired him to do, of course, his Inhumans run, which is an Eisner winning run. But I started out as a fan of Paul, and that's when we were handed Marvel Knights, we said we better hire people that are a lot more talented than us because we have to look good to them. And Paul was, we put him on Inhumans, and between him and Jay Lee, it's one of the books I'm most proud of, actually, that came out of the Marvel Knights line.
It was a really interesting time as well, Jimmy, because I'm very much an outsider insider in comics. I've done a lot of them, and people know that I've had a lot of success, and we did really well at Marvel and so on. But I build across different media, and I do a lot of game design. I do a lot of new media. So currently I'm working in the NFT space a lot, and I'm doing AR and VR storytelling. I've got a new animation company. Like I do a lot of different stuff, right? And so I come into Marvel Knights, and this is how it came down. And this is the crazy thing that people are always frustrated by. Jimmy, I don't know if you know this, but the way it came to me was that I was minding my own business in Massachusetts. I used to live in this little town called Northampton. And I get a call from Jay Lee. And Jay and I had always talked about doing a book together. And I used to write Hellblazer for DC. Yep. And he was doing Hellshock, which Jay, being Jay, would put out one book every 18 months, right, Jimmy?
That's you being generous, but yes.
I'm being generous.
Yeah.
He would never put work out because he's brilliant, right? But he would tear a page out. He'd finish a page and he would rip it up because he hated it. Mm. So Jay calls me, and we had been asked, could we do a Hellblazer Hellshock crossover? And we would call each other sometimes and say, what do you want to do? And we'd say, I got no idea, dude. I don't know what to do. So one day he calls me and he's like, hey, man, I've been talking to Marvel. You'd be interested in working over at Marvel? And I said, yeah, I suppose so. I don't know anyone there. And he said, well, Joe and Jimmy from Event, because that was where he knew you from. Yeah. And I'm like, I know those guys. And he goes, yeah, they got a job over at Marvel. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, those two? Great. And so he goes, well, how do you feel about doing the Inhumans? And I said, yeah, that's great. Who are they? Because I'd never heard of them.
Which works to your advantage, I think, too.
It always works to my advantage, and it always upsets people, the fans. But I'd never heard of them. And so they sent me a couple of 5-page Kirby stories. And I was like, I get it, right? These are good. That's great. We can do that. And then we came up and we pitched it. Remember, we had to pitch it all the way across Marvel, Jimmy. And I've talked too much, so I should let you take it from there, because that was pretty interesting, that situation.
Well, we were fans of the Hellblazer work you were doing.
Right.
And, and Jay was somebody we knew pretty well. And we were trying to, so the backtrack a little bit, guys. This is like when Marvel was not owned by Disney. This is when Marvel was having their worst time ever. They were going in Chapter 11, and they weren't making movies. They weren't doing TV shows. The comics were not selling, and they were canceling books like Daredevil, Punisher. All these books were getting canceled because people weren't buying them. So somebody must have done a lot of crack or something and decided, hey, let's call Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti, who were we put out our own books called Ash and Painkiller Jane. And they called us up and said, would you guys like to create a line of books for Marvel Comics? And, we came up with the Marvel Knights logo, and then we figured, well, let's just hire super talented people, also people we know and can trust, and if you look at the 4 books, it makes complete sense. The 4-book launch, because we had everybody from Kevin Smith, who was a buddy that we were helping with his movies, and Mark Texeira and Christopher Priest, and on Black Panther. I went to high school with Mark Texeira, and it's like there's a lot of roots with everything. And with Paul and Jay, we knew Paul's work, but we knew Jay, and Jay was sort of like our way to get to Paul. Because you don't just call DC and say, "Can I have Paul Jenkins' number?" They don't like that, especially when you're working at Marvel. But you know, Paul hit us with the concept. You know, I laugh because I like to say it's like Game of Thrones with superheroes, way back before Game of Thrones. But Paul hit us with an idea that we're like, yes, it's fresh, it's new. Jay will draw the hell out of it, and it's got to be something. It's got to smell like something else, you know, because our Black Panther book was completely different. I mean, if you see the Black Panther movie, it has a lot to do with the movie. And the Daredevil book with Kevin Smith was its own thing. And even the Punisher, we kind of killed the Punisher and made him like an avenging angel type thing, which we knew would piss people off. But there's a certain thinking to that, which was they're going to be so pissed off, they're going to have to buy it to see what they're going to be angry about. And, you know, and so we launched the line with really strong people. And Paul's the Inhumans book, man, was nominated for Eisner, and you know, I think it won one.
We won an Eisner, yeah.
Yeah, I have one somewhere, and I know that sounds horrible. I say somewhere. It used to be on my mom's fridge, but my mom passed away, so I don't know where. It is. Anyway, yeah, so we just lucked out being able to get in contact with Paul, and the book is amazing. I mean, it's still in print. You can still get it, and I think it's a comic book masterpiece in every way.
I'll tell you what was really cool about it though, right? Is that what Joe and Jimmy did, and this is like where we come in as creators. You know, you're going to walk into Marvel and basically you're going to say, I want to do something, and they're going to say no. And I knew that was what was going to happen to me, because I wasn't bringing them. Like, I don't know the Inhumans, right? I don't even know the characters. I had to learn who they are, and I was like, I think it's that like dog with a tuning fork on his head, right? And that's Lockjaw. And they're like, yeah. Okay, so now everyone's a bit skeptical, but I don't need to know the background of those characters. I need to just know what I want to write. And when we came in, I knew that I was pitching them like, well, we might be doing a bit more like character development than Marvel tend to want to do. And we might be doing a little bit more push and a little bit more literature. And I don't mean to be over silly about it, just more like, I want to do some thematic stories, and that's just kind of like how I do stuff. And Joe and Jimmy completely protected us. And I'll never forget Jimmy going up there with that first pitch, and it was a really big pitch that I'd written, and we had to go and pitch it around. And I will tell you that because I'm a graybeard now, right? So it's like I'm my own grandfather. And you know, at that point, then your grandfather can like say stuff that he just thinks now. So now I've done it long enough. I'm going to tell you what happened. We go in and we pitch it, and Bob Harris, basically, I pitched it. But actually, Bob Harris just ran up to me in the hall and went, I don't think Inhumans is going to go past one issue. And then he ran off, and I'm like, wow, nice to meet you, Bob.
Yeah.
Like, what? And I think
we weren't loved. You know, they didn't.
Yeah.
Marvel, the people working at Marvel were not loving that. We, you know, when we took the gig, we asked them for the penthouse of the Park Avenue building. And that didn't go over too well with the rest of the people who were on the 11th and 12th floor. But I said, if we're gonna be there working on these books, we need a place. And we wanted the penthouse because the only way to get up to it was to get off the elevator and get on a staircase.
Yeah.
So we'd have plenty of warning if somebody was coming up. We'd hear the stairs coming up and say, whatever activity we were doing upstairs, we can put it out or throw it out the window or empty the bottle or whatever it may be at the time. But we needed our space. So a lot of the people at Marvel didn't love the idea that, hey, who are these guys? Why do they get to choose what they want? Why do they get to pick the more expensive colorists and so on? But our only goal was to show Marvel that we can do it better than they were. And sometimes that's all the drive you need. It doesn't mean you're gonna. It just means you should have the drive. I'm going to be better than the last thing, or I'm going to be better than the last person. And that was the drive we had with the books. And I think it was contagious with all the teams working on the books. Everybody felt like this is something different. We got to work harder on this. It's got to be smarter. It's got to look better. And stand out, and we got lucky. We picked all the right people, including Paul.
When you're working like that, right, and you know that, like, well, I mean, you know, and I won't always just kind of say names, but I remember walking in. We had to pitch it to a couple of people, and one of the people we pitched to, I remember we walked in the office, and I got Joe and Jimmy with me to go like, oh, I don't really know anybody here, but you know, let me just go meet you and tell you what I think my story is. I know you're going to love it. and that person was listening vaguely. So there was obviously a problem in hearing my pitch. They didn't want to hear it. And a fire engine went by. I'll never forget it. A fire engine went by and they just kind of basically ignored me and looked out the window and then poked their head out the window. Now I'm like a punk, right? So I'm like, I'm going to go push that guy out the window. And Joe and Jimmy are holding me back like, no. Right? It's more like those guys were like in the sniper tower doing sniper cover for us as much as they were creating their own work and all of that. And there's one other thing that to understand is I remember walking in and talking to Jimmy for the first time. You know, I didn't really know Jimmy. I think I'd seen you at shows, mate, but I talked to Jimmy in depth. And it's like, we started talking about art history. And I'm like, surely you don't work in comics, do you? You're actually having a conversation about the history of art and technique and stuff like that. This is great. I love it. So it was a great environment. And we changed the history and trajectory of comics with those 4 titles.
And don't blame the TV show on either of us because we have nothing to do with it.
So what year
like
was
you guys
that?
are rebels. You guys are
like,
definitely rebels.
Was that like in 2000, early 2000, like late 90s or?
Yeah, it was late 90s. It was, I think it was like 97 or 98 around there. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a billion years ago and it kind of was in a weird way. But then again, you know, I go to a con and there's the books. Can you sign these? And they're like, I just read this. This is great. And I'm like, okay. Well,
when y'all started that journey, did you ever foresee what Marvel would turn into today? Like, because I mean, it has just gone skyrocketed.
Yeah. So, you know, we say skyrocketed. I have a different perspective, I guess. I've always, whoever bought them, once Disney was buying them, I knew that was it. It's just going to be about, you know, the movies and everything after that. I kind of was, you know, to be honest with you, you know, when we were in there, it was in chapter 11. They were a couple of $100 million shy of staying in business. So all we were trying to do was say, hey, you know what? These are great characters. Don't give up on these books. You know, I mean, we picked 4 odd books. We picked The Punisher and Daredevil, which were both being canceled at the time. We picked Inhumans because both Joe and I grew up with Fantastic Four and loving Kirby's Inhumans, and we picked Black Panther because we thought nobody's doing anything with Black Panther. What the hell's going on? This is like the greatest character, and again, a character that started in the Fantastic Four. You know, a book that's very close to me because I grew up. I have a full set of issue 1 to like 125. You know, it was one of my favorite books. So, you know, that to sit there and watch a Black Panther movie was amazing. I did stay till the end credits to see if I got a thank you, which I didn't. But I don't think I've ever been thanked in a Marvel movie or TV show. But I will say I have a lot to do with a lot of them.
Yeah, and I'm gonna step in there and point out what they got, because what they got was like the fuel for the next 10 years from us. You know, I wrote The Origin of Wolverine. I remember the first time I got a phone call, and it was. I was writing Spider-Man at the time. They'd given me Spider-Man to do my little Quiet Revolution on, right? And Ralph Macchio was my editor, and he was a great dude. I loved Ralph. He was a really nice dude, you know. But he was a kind of a funny guy because as kind as nice as he was, he had a mean streak a mile wide. And so Ralph calls me, and then I think Joe Quesada called me, and they're like, "Listen, they like the work that you did with the Green Goblin. They really like that story and they think it's really good and all that. And Raimi's been kicking around and he's really kind of thinking about reshaping the film in that direction. But you can't get a credit." And I'm like, why not? And then, well, Stan Lee gets the credit. And this is just kind of what deal we signed. And I went, to my shame, I sort of went, well, I understand, guys. I don't care. You know, I'm not going to. Yeah, well, then, you know, my stuff from the Hulk got used. And then I wrote The Origin of Wolverine. I didn't even get a mention when they do the Origin of Wolverine. You sort of sit there and you think like, well, it's a corporation. So in hindsight, I suppose it was always going to go that way, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's corporate comics. You know, look, I mean, you know, even the last 6 years for me with writing Harley Quinn, and them basing a couple of movies off the character I created. I did get a thank you in the second one, in the Birds of Prey movie, and that was very nice of them. But in the end, we don't really benefit from this stuff. We like we should, you know. The only people that really make us feel good about this stuff is the comic fans, you know, because they understand, they have our back, and it's probably why I love them so much. You know. anybody who follows me on Twitter knows how much I engage everybody, because I think the comic fans are like the smartest people I know. They're like well-versed, well-rounded. They're really well-rounded, and they read, and but they also like to look for things that are new, and they love technology and all this stuff. So I kind of, like I said, I let the corporates do their own thing, and corporations do their own thing, and always do my Kickstarters and create our own books on the side to keep my sanity and own my IP, which is very important.
I got a question. I got a question for you guys. I wanted to know, since you guys talk about all this work that you guys put in to basically be a superhero in real life, right? For Marvel, you guys, I mean, you worked on Odd Comics, right? Worked on, John Constantine books, all these good things. Who was I would say, and this is for both of you, who was your biggest influences in comics that made you feel like you needed this drive to do this kind of work in the industry?
Mine is very different from Jimmy. Go first.
So my drive, I think because I grew up with three brothers, so we had like this invisible racetrack that we're always trying to compete and run down. And my parents were really good about any stupid thing I was interested in. They would engage me about it. They would sit with me. I mean, we did not have money when I grew up. So, my dad, I'd start drawing, and I'd say to my dad, it'd be great to have paper. And he'd come back the next day with a big ream of paper. And on the backside of the paper, it would have like somebody's address, like Dr. Williams' office address. And I found out my dad would buy all the misprints at the printing place down the street for like nothing. And I would draw on the backs of that stuff. But he always engaged me. I mean, my dad would even take me to comic conventions. And back then they were only in like a basement of a hotel or something. But I remember him haggling with a guy because I was going to pay $10 for Conan #1, and he made the guy give it to me for $6. So that kind of stuff stays with you. Like, so my parents were definitely the ones that encouraged me to do something. And I think on some level, I always wanted to make them proud. Like, I wanted to do something so well and be successful at it that I can say, hey, look, I'm doing this and I'm successful. Unfortunately, they passed away way before I had a lot of success. So I didn't get to do that. Although wherever they are, they're probably giggling about everything right now. But I think that was my drive, and then I looked at, I looked at like a lot of times my drive comes from frustration. I see a lot of creators, older creators that did so much great work, and they have no money, or we're helping with Heroes Initiative just to get them a ride to go to a doctor and everything. And I see that kind of stuff, and it also drives me to not only own my IP, but to actually be able to help those guys and pay back all the wonderful times I had looking at their work and reading it and enjoying the art. So my drive comes from a lot of different places. It's also because I'm a Brooklyn boy, and I think a lot of Brooklyn people. I'll say this is everywhere, but I'll say especially where I am. I've had a lot of people in my life telling me I couldn't do things, and that. Like that to a guy like me is like, telling me I can't do something is another way of saying I dare you to do that, So that's been my drive, is a lot of different places. Paul?
Yeah, in my case, this may even be news to Jimmy. I don't know if you know this about me, Jimmy, but I know Mario does. So I grew up. Yeah, I mean, people look at me and they're like, man, that guy's like successful and done really well. I own my own company. I work across all these media. So I grew up in a caravan with no electricity. My father left my family when I was 5 years old. And when he left, my mom has pretty difficult mental health issues. And so she raised two boys, no electricity, no money, no food. We picked what we ate. I lived with Romanies. They're all itinerant, like they were all immigrant workers, I should say, that came in. And we walked to school because we didn't afford the bus fare in every part of the weather. And so to come from like that kind of deprivation, is something that's kind of unusual. And the craziest part of it was I never cared. I never was upset with it. We went through a lot of crap, my brother and I, and it really beat him up. Like a lot of the stuff that we dealt with, which is tough, right? Really tough stuff. It really hurt him, and it's hurt his life the whole time. It's given him issues with drinking and just unhappiness. And to me, I didn't give a toss. I didn't care. I just was sort of there, and I was like, and so one of the things that I've found, and I've told the story a lot. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the origin of Wolverine that I wrote, but if you actually look at the first book, it's called The Hill, and it's actually me. I grew up looking at the farmhouse on the top of the hill with the lights on, and thinking, well, it would be great to have a fire, or it'd be great to have electricity. And my mum was pretty interesting because she would like boil a kettle over the fireplace, you know, and then she'd pour the kettle into the bath and it'd be freezing, right? It'd be so cold. And she'd put a bit of cold water in and she'd go, this is how the Romans used to have a bath, right? And you go, really? I don't believe a word of what you just said. She'd go, yeah, that does. And you'd have a bath and you'd literally bathe in about like this much water and you'd be freezing, but she could boil another kettle and get a hot water bottle and put it in your bed, and you get in there and you're freezing, but you finally make it. And, you know, it sounds awful, but it's actually sort of like, I remember this one thing that happened to me, and I've spoken about it a lot in the last couple of years now, because I've actually kind of opened up about growing up that way. And I remember I walked into a barley field and I lay on the ground in this barley field, and I said to myself, I don't think I'm almost like not part of this family. I don't think I'm going to be like them. And I was a smart little kid, and I started going to school and playing football all the time, and I learned all the time, and I really wanted to be the best at learning. And like Jimmy, I think if you tell me I can't do something, my answer is actually that means you can't do it, because I can do it. And so to bring that all the way forward, I ended up teaching at Kennesaw State University here in Georgia. And I remember driving to the commencement thing, and they asked me to speak at the beginning of the year. And I'm thinking, man, if only you knew where I came from. So I'm driving there, and my wife said to me, what are you going to talk about? And I said, I don't know. And she was flipping out with fear, because she was like, and I'm like, I could talk about 1,000 things, man. Just talk about something I did. And so I got there, and I remember standing in front of all the students, and I said, let me tell you something. You know what you can't do? You can't break into comics. I'll tell you how you can't break into comics, right? You can't go down to San Diego Comic-Con and meet the editor of Hellblazer and say, can I write your comic? And when he asks you what you've written, you say, I've never written one before. You certainly can't you can't change you can't work in video games. There's no way for you to do that. And you certainly can't change the way that stories are told in video games, or be an innovator in that space. You can't work in new media. You can't do any of those things. And the whole room was silent when I told them all the things they realistically couldn't do. And then I said, well, I've done all those things, so never let anyone tell you can't do it. And the whole place goes and cheers. I got off the stage, and my wife was so annoyed at me. She's like, you had me terrified. She said, I was terrified. And then suddenly you've got them. But it's true. It's like, and for people like you come from Brooklyn, Jimmy, you know, it's like, I ain't going to care about stuff like, tell me I can't do something. I came to America with $50 in my pocket, and I met the two guys that created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was a second employee over there. And then I did all the stuff that I've done because I met those guys and did the work. But if I'd have met them and been a jackass, I wouldn't have gotten any work, would I, right? I would have worked for them for 10 minutes and then I would have left. But I'm a pretty driven person, and I got myself to the States, and I got myself that job. And within 3 or 4 months, I was running the licensing part of that. And then I went to Tundra Publishing. And then I was Alan Moore's editor. I was Neil Gaiman's editor. And I went to visit Alan, and I looked at the way he wrote big numbers, and I went, I can do that. And I chatted with Alan a little bit. Then I came back to America and then went down to San Diego and asked him for a job. So every time that anyone says you can't do something, it just means that they can't do it.
I think it's a personal. I think everybody here has it like it's a personal challenge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like somebody throws down the gauntlet to you and says, "Nah, you'll never be able to do that." And you're like, "Let me see how I can do this." You know, and again, you know, it's like any kind of success. There's a bunch of people that always quit. Like I always say, when I started in comics, I was an inker, and I used to walk up to Marvel and help Mark Texeira because he was drawing Punisher and Ghost Rider monthly. This is like 1991. He was doing both books, and they were both selling really well. And he just called me up. He was a high school buddy. He said, "Dude, I need help, man. I can't do these 2 books." And I'm like, "I'll help you if we can work in the Marvel offices together. I don't want to take it home and work on it. I want to work up at Marvel." And he goes, "Yeah, I don't care. Meet me up there." And we'd work there. And every week I would take samples of my art and drop off a pack in every editor's office with pages. every week. And I didn't stay around to say, hey, what do you think? I would drop them off and it would have my phone number on it. And eventually, when I would walk in there, I'd walk down the gauntlet of offices and inevitably somebody go, hey, Jimmy, I have this. It's a rush job. You think you can take this on? I took everything. It didn't matter if I couldn't do it. I said, I'm gonna work at Marvel Comics. And I took on so much work at one point. I remember I'm like, I am not gonna sleep for 4 days because I have to nail this book. And you know, and it was that drive. And it's funny because I started doing that at DC, and then Milestone came, and then Dennis Cowan said, hey, you want to ink all the first issue covers for our books?
Oh my God.
Yes, I do. You know, so all the Milestone first issues, I inked all those covers over
Oh
Dennis.
my God.
Jimmy,
Yeah,
I just got to tell you something.
The white guy.
You have no idea. You just started something right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were just starting, and I was like, he showed me hardware, and I said, oh, I'll ink the shit out of that, man. You know, and Dennis is amazing. You know, Dennis. Just
Oh my God.
So, but you know, a lot of that had to do with me being there, me getting my work in on time or even early. That was my thing. I got it in early, and the editors. I understood one thing: editors don't want to work hard. They don't want to call you and harass you. They want the stuff to appear on their desk. And I was the guy that would slip in, drop the work off on their desk with a little note, says, hope you like it. Give me a call if you have anything else. And I'd get out of there. And I would get calls like crazy. That was the beginning of my career. I was hustling, man.
Yeah. I want to say something real quick. Actually, I got two things I want to say. First, when you mentioned Milestone, PK is about to like fall out of his chair because he looks up to the Milestone comics and Static Shock and everything that they've done. And the second thing I want to ask, well, this is kind of like a question here maybe, but you ever get those situations where you're at a Comic-Con or you're doing an appearance at a comic store or, you know, at a place and you get maybe like a 9 or 10-year-old kid walking in with a little red wagon full of every book that you've ever done and say, hey, Mr. Palmiotti, can you please sign these?
I knock over the wagon, right? And then I drink some booze and I go to sleep. No, I'm kidding. You know, when I get that, it's usually like I look at the parents and going, you put your kid up to this? You know? Because a kid usually, if it's a kid with a comic, he usually has one and it's all rolled up and they unfold it. And they go, can you do something on this? You know, that's the kid's book. When it's a wagon full of kids, that's mom or dad's books. And I know what's going on.
So I got a story for you, okay? And maybe you could relate to this. My dad was a Brooklyn guy as well. He actually came over from Italy, and he came over with a penny in his pocket at the age of 14. The second day in America, he couldn't even speak English. And somebody told him, if you take a mail truck or a milk truck, you can get all the milk for free. So he stole a milk truck by accident on his second day in America. But he grew up and he had an appreciation for pinball and comic books. He loved comic books. And when I was younger, my dad, when I would be sitting at his pizza places, he would send me over to a place at the time was called Steve's Comic Relief in Newtown, Pennsylvania, or to like the 7-Eleven. And he would just give me a bunch of money and say, buy all these books, you know, whatever makes you happy, buy them and read them and enjoy them. So I built up this huge collection of Batman comics. And my dad got a tip from his friend at the comic book store that Doug, I'm probably going to say the last name wrong, Moink,
Doug
was,
Mensch.
Yep,
Doug
okay,
Mensch.
him. Yeah. That he was going to be at Oxford Valley Mall, Pennsylvania at the United Arts Theater. So, he has my mom drive me up with all my Batman comics that Doug did. And I have a little red wagon. I pull it out and I wheel it in. And there's not a big line there. Like, nobody knew they were going to be there. It was like kind of like a surprise thing for the third Batman movie. I think it was the one with Alicia Silverstone.
Right.
And I pull in there with that little red wagon, and Doug and I forget the guy next to him that they both worked on when
I bet it was Paul Galassi. Maybe it was Paul Galassi.
No, it was somebody else. When Batman had his back broken by Bane.
Bane broken.
Graham Nolan? Was it Graham Nolan or whoever? I mean,
I'll have to look it up and see, but because I have them like right behind me. I got someone right behind me.
Jenkins could be Dan Jenkins, could be any of those guys. Yeah.
So I put all the comics up there, and I say, "Do you sign comics?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Can you sign all of these plus these and plus these?" And he goes, "Kid, I will sign them for you, but I won't be able to write a story or draw a comic for the next 3-4 weeks." And, you know, he sat there, he signed every single one. By the time I came out of the movie, every single one of those books are signed. And I thanked him so much. Like, that really meant a lot to me that he actually spent his time to do that. Because I know he didn't have to. Could have been like, hey, the limit's like 2 or 3. But he did it for me. And later that night, because we were there a long time talking, because my dad started talking to them, I ended up winning a art contest because you had to draw a picture of Batman, and I took a picture of Batman animated series and I drew it. And I wasn't like, you know, I love to draw, but I was never like the greatest comic book artist. I was better with like pastels and paintings and stuff, but comic art I was never really good at. But I drew it anyway, and I came in second place, and that made me feel so good. Like as a kid, and like that was like the best feeling. I think my dad bribed him with pizza or something. He had to, because there's no way I should have won.
Maybe milk. Maybe he gave him a lot of milk.
There you go.
It's possible. But do you guys ever have situations like that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, with like the last 5 or 6 years with Amanda and I doing Harley Quinn, we've had more moms and daughters come up to us, and the mother going, you know, me and my daughter, we read this together, you know. We read Harley Quinn every month together. And, you know, of course, Amanda and I look at each other like, uh-oh, you know, I wonder if they caught that in the innuendos we dropped in there. But it's the sweetest thing. And then, you know, Amanda being an artist and a young girl seeing Amanda drawing away like that, they get very inspired. So we have a lot of refrigerator art from young fans, you know, that come up to Amanda and I and say, hey, I just drew Harley Quinn. This is for you guys. You know, we have a lot of that. And, you know, that's fantastic. I mean, you know, I like when they start young, you know, when we get the comic book people hooked young, you know, because I got to say, it's like, you know, it becomes their drug of choice. And that's a lot safer drug than most. And, you know, it's kids that are curious. I find the comic kids, I said it before, they're more curious. They're more interested in reading and traveling and looking at the book and looking up. I remember as a kid, and Paul, you probably remember this, reading the Stan Lee stuff and like looking up a word, see what that word means, you know, like, I used to tell my teacher friend, I said, anytime a kid's reading a comic, you should just back away, because nobody told him to read it. He's reading it on his own. Nobody bribed them with a piece of cake or something to read the book. When kids pick up something and read it on their own, you just back away and let them do it. And if they want to read more, you go, like your dad said, go out there and buy some books, because he knew if you were interested in it, you were going to read.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really helpful to kind of address here as well is like the relationship between the creator and the fans, right, Jimmy? Because when I first got into it, I'm a pretty affable guy. I really like interacting with fans, and I know Jimmy is as well. But you have to understand that, like, comic book creators, especially, they're not really trained to interact with fans, right? And some people are pretty painfully shy. Some people are socially awkward. Some people are a bit aggressive. You know, it's very difficult to do it. And so I'm a carnival barker, right? Fans come on, hey, how's it going? I'll like make friends with them in a second. But I find that easy. But I do think that people should appreciate that comic book people aren't necessarily trained to do this. And so there's a lot of times, but one of the things that I've done with other comic creators is I've tried to give them, if I'm ever going to give them advice and or like a kick up the rear end, it's a bit like, come on, man, be nice to the fans, right? Because they pay your wages. And what will happen is a lot of times fans will come up and it's sort of like the thing that they see at the table is a sign that says $5 per signature, and then they hand it over and someone signs it and just hands it back without looking, and someone collects the money. And that's no good, right? That's not what we have a responsibility to our fans and, you know, the way that we interact with them, right? And if you think that you don't have a responsibility to them, then I think that starts to create problems, right? And I think it's a shame that we see this a lot, but I do think it's understandable to some extent because some creators are a bit nervous in that. So quickly, anecdotally, you know, I had a situation where I had a fan come up to my table And I was signing at Marvel actually, and the fan was standing way back behind the ropes, and he didn't want to come in. I knew he was nervous, and he watched the whole line go through, and then it was our time to finish and the next group of creators. And I said, "Hey, buddy, do you want a signature?" And he's sort of like, "What, me?" I'm like, "Yeah, man," because I could see him standing there. Because you know how this is, Jim. If he's holding a comic in both hands, that means he's nervous. And so he's got his comic in both his hands, and I'm like, "All right." So he comes on over, right? And I said, "Do you want me to sign it to you?" And he went, "No." I said, "Well, great." So I signed it and I gave it to him. He didn't even say thank you, and he ran off. I thought, well, whatever. It takes a million people to make the world go around. And he sent me a letter a couple of weeks later, and this will blow your mind. He said, "Mr. Jenkins, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the one who wrote you a letter when you wrote Hellblazer for DC." And in fact, he had brought me an episode, a copy of Hellblazer. So years before, when I wrote that issue, I got a letter that was sent to me. It was a written letter from my editor, and he just sent it to me. Axel Alonso sent it to me, and he just wrote "wow" on it. And I opened it, and it was a guy who had clinical depression, and his father had died, and he felt terrible. But in the same week, his brother and his sister-in-law had a baby. And when he saw the baby, he had a momentary pang of happiness, and he couldn't reconcile those two feelings. And so he resolved to kill himself, to end his own life. And he sat in those days, this is early 90s, mid 90s, and he didn't have the internet really to look at. So he sat in a garage and he built out a pipe system, and he closed the garage door and he put the pipe in his car. And apparently the way he wrote it, he said, I'm like, well, I don't even know how to do it. So he went down the comic store because it was a Wednesday. And he comes back with some comics to read while he ends his own life. And he turns the car on and he reads that issue of Hellblazer. And coincidentally, that issue of Hellblazer was about how sometimes in a family, someone can die and be born in the same week. So it was absolutely alive, guy's life, and he turned his engine off, right? So when you think about how that is, you have to remember that maybe meeting you is the biggest moment of those fans' life. That was the biggest moment of his life, to meet the guy who he associated with that moment. So it really taught me a lesson anyway. I was always like that, but it's sort of like, you never know who's going to be standing in front of you. So don't pick a fight, don't argue with them. Be kind to every single one of them, because they do pay your wages and they're there for a reason. They're standing, even if they're arguing with you, it's because they got something that they're interested in and they care about. Just, you don't know what someone wakes up and goes to bed like. So it taught me that lesson, and I've always kind of carried that with me,
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, when it comes to the Marvel movies and the Marvel comics or DC, whatever, the source material, of course, are the comics. And in our group, we got for about 530,000 people, and we have a lot of sort of fans that are just all movies. And then we got an enormous sort of fans that are comics first. And then they sort of check the folks that are in the movies, but it always turns into some sort of argument, right? And we're there to moderate it and try to fix it. How do you guys deal with a lot of that stuff? And then also, when it comes to digital, are you more of the digital comic reader, or do you like the paper?
Paper.
I'm all about the paper. I like I'm a tactile person. I like to touch. I want to see what kind of paper it is. I want the cover to be heavier than the inside. Yeah. I like my hardcovers. I like my omnibuses. I like, I have digital comics because some stuff I don't have room for, and so I'll read it digitally. But I'm definitely, I do my Kickstarters and I get to pick out the paper quality and the stock of the hardcovers, and that's like my favorite thing. Like I'm creating the way this is going to feel to other people, and when something feels cheap, it's usually cheap. That's my thinking on that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely, but I do love digital comics as well, because a lot of stuff, I just don't have room for, but I want to read it. So, and it's pretty inexpensive to buy. I mean, forget about the marked up brand new digital stuff, but you wait a little while, you can pretty much get in there and get some great bargains. Yeah. So
I mean, I think the thing is, I'm paper. Like I actually don't really ever buy the monthly ones. I really like collected editions, usually hardcovers if I can get them. You know, I like that kind of thing. So I just want to own them for a long time. As far as digital comics go, I work in digital media through different things that I do all the time. And so I'm not a big fan of digital comics because I want to make different things. You know, I'm, like I said, I work in, you know, I have a part owner in an NFT company, and you know, we're doing storytelling through NFTs now, but you'd be surprised at what that's gonna be. Right now, it's all hot and sexy, and everybody's really excited about NFTs, but that's not what it really is. It's just a really cool kind of mix of story and collectible. But I think that digital comics are kind of problematic because it's really, well, you know, you hold it there and it's like, what can you do with it? I can do the animation of the page turning when I just press it like that. That's nothing. What they need to be is they need to be immersive stories that are intended for that medium, so that when you touch them, they interact and you can do things with the story. Not just choose your own adventure, but just more like the story itself is geared towards the digital interaction that you can do. You should be able to use sound. You should be able to use movement correctly. And most digital comics, especially if they're motion comics, it's like they're just repurposing something that wasn't intended to be made that way. So I'm a bit skeptical about it, but not fully, because, you know, there are some great ones in the middle of it. Of course, there's some really good ones in there. You know?
Yeah, and to go back to your original question, Paris, I mean, I love the fact that the comic people and the film people like arguing and having conversations. I think unless there's a passion involved, you don't get arguments, you know. And I think when people agree too much, I think somebody's doing something wrong. You know, and like I said, everything's about perspective, right? And that's what's great about like your Facebook group is somebody puts, you know, this is the best Superman, and the guy goes, no way, are you kidding me? Blah 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 blah. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's not politics, you know. It's not it's sort of like, hi, we all love this, but I like it because of this, because my experience is this, and you know. And the film guys are just as valid as the comic guys. You know, the comic guys get mad when the film guys start telling them about the history of a character, and the comic guys go, no, you don't understand. You know, 1974, this book came out. You know, look, I get it all day long. I mean, the last book I did for DC was the Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey book. And we watched, you know, we saw the movie. We went to the premiere. It was great. And when we were writing the book, I said, all right, I'm going to assume that when Amanda and I write this book and Amanda draws it, that people have saw the movie already. So I'm going to do an amalgam type of story. It makes the movie people happy, makes the comic book people happy. We're going to do this book where we're going to try to connect all this stuff and then give them something to complain about, brand new. They never even thought they were going to complain about. But that's what we do, right? That's the fun of those boards. Your boards are, you know, that the interaction is fantastic. And I learn a lot when they have conversations, especially when I'm working on a series and people are really talking about it back and forth. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta tighten that story up there, you know, like, or I can't believe they like that character. That character's such an asshole. Like, why do they like that character? So as a creator, you learn a lot from the fans, and I got to tell you, like I'm very approachable at the shows. You know, Paul is too. People come up to me, and once in a while, I'll get somebody, and they're a little off, and they have to come up to me and tell me how much I'm terrible, or you know, I don't really like your work. You know, I hope you don't mind, but I didn't really like that book, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I said, there's 800 more comics on the wall you can buy. It's all good. Right. But I'd rather have some reaction than no reaction, and. Yeah. I think that's Paris. That's like the lifeline of what you do. It's like, here's my opinion.
Yeah. I'm sure it's really weird seeing you guys work from comic books being interpreted in different ways, maybe different spinoffs or even different mediums, for sure, in like movies. And I know, Paul, you have a few different things, a few different interpretations of your work in different medias, and I'm sure that's really weird to see that.
I make it, right? Like, I'm in the business. I kind of left comics to some extent some time ago because I make my own stuff. I have my own things that I do. You know, I don't really do comics. That's the crazy thing. I've done loads of them, right? I've done loads of them, and I'm known for it. But I'm probably more innovative in game design. I've done a lot of work in big games, you know. And you know, I've done, I think, 6 platinum selling console games, and I also, you know, I'm an animation director, and I do all kinds of things like that. So it's kind of like the best thing about comics, right, is that they're so economical in storytelling. And what I found, and Jim, I don't know if this is true of you, but what I found is that when you get like a novelist or something or a screenwriter, they come into comics and they struggle, right? They have a really hard time adapting. Whereas comics people can go out and write screenplay or write a novel and feel like liberated because you actually have the space to do it. Because you got to work it out, right? You think of a monthly comic, you got 20 pages and you're going to do this big story and you got to work out how to take these frozen moments in time and juxtapose them to make a page and then put 20 of those pages in a row or 22 of them. It is a really, really, really hard technique. But what's so great about it is, you know, when I was flying at Marvel, I think I was writing 5 comic books a month, and you'd write a story for the Hulk and then you'd write the other 3 and then it would come time for Hulk again. You go, I haven't even breathed yet. Hang on a minute. You do the next one. But creatively, as you flying. And so I think comics are brilliant for that. And they're one of the oldest forms of human artistic expression. I mean, you know, cave paintings are sequential narratives, and so we should really hold up comic creators in reverence. But we don't in society.
Right. That's
you know.
right.
So I got something I want to add. So I obviously Clowns touched on. I'm a huge Milestone Media fan. Okay, Dwayne McDuffie. I mean, Dennis Korn, those are my dudes. I always want to meet those in real life. And I feel like the 90s was the biggest boom for comics, right? I'm a huge comic fan on both, on not just the big 2, but, you know, I don't care if it's Todd McFarlane on Spawn or Image. I don't care who it is. IDW, they all do good work, good stories. That's why I love it, right? What do you guys feel like? Because I got friends like TJ Sterling, who also worked at DC and Marvel, but he now is independent with Raid Comics. How do you guys feel about the independent scene of these guys being able to capture the new generation of comic readers, or the younger generation, I would say, to get those guys just as excited as I was growing up loving reading these stories, right? What do you think? What kind of suggestions, or what do you think could be done to get those younger readers engaged?
I think the first thing anybody buying comics should do is stop buying 800 versions of Batman comics.
Yeah.
Okay, stop. You know, you have to. Variety is everything. It's like saying I'm only going to eat pizza every day of my life. We have a bunch of people that only buy the stuff they feel safe with, and they're not trying new things. And what I hope in the next couple of years is mainstream comics become everything but those characters, the big 2. I'm hoping mainstream is about creators creating. You know, I'll tell you this, and this is my belief. Everybody in this thing can write a comic because you've read it enough. Your brain knows beginning, middle, and end, act 1, act 2, act 3. I have to end the story. There's like a certain thing about comics that people who read them, you know, it's like a thing you do it over and over and over. And I think everybody can do it. I just think that new ideas are needed. I got to be honest with you. You know, people go to DC and they go, well, do a Batman book, you'll make money. And I'm like, well, if you want to make money, don't do comics. Go into another field. If you're, you know, you're not going to make great money. Look at the way Paul and I address. It's horrible. You know, we're like in the top of our field. Look at Paul.
I got my COVID mask in case this went bad.
Yeah, I got mine here in case somebody runs in, starts robbing things in my house. But no, I mean, seriously, we do it out of love, you know, and I think the time is coming where it's corporate comics. I feel like Marvel and DC are corporate comics. I feel like it's the same story over and over. And then they have a, you know, if I see another comic where, you know, this is a special book because Batman's going to really go one-on-one with the Joker. I mean, Jesus, dude, you know, it's been happening all our life over and over. And so I get excited like when a company like Milestone comes, because we have Dwayne, we have Dennis, Michael Davis, everybody that was working up there, Joe Illidge, all the guys saying, here's new characters, here's new heroes for our generation. Here's a reflection of who we are.
Facts.
I've never been the son of a millionaire. You know, I've never had my parents go to the opera. I lived in an apartment. You know, like the relation to these heroes are getting further and further away. I've never been the son of an alien race sent to Earth. You know, the stuff we do, the stuff we see now is like a reflection of people. Like we see Static. Static is somebody we know. You know, and so a lot of the new books, I'm very excited about people doing new takes on new characters, and I'm hoping these traditional characters kind of fade a little bit, because I just think the creators need to be more creative. Putting them right back into, I'm going to do 50 issues of Spider-Man. That's great. We've seen a million Peter Parker stories, but you know, now doing the different Spider-Verse is like so much more of a personal reflection of the creators. So I'm hoping books turn into a reflection of the people that are doing them, and they bring their experiences to them, because I do get bored. And I maybe just because I'm old white guy talking, but I get bored of reading the same comics over and over, man. There's so much stuff. I don't even know where to begin with X-Men these days, because I lost track. They restarted it and rebooted everything so many times. I don't know where to start. Like if somebody said, hey, I like the X-Men, what should I read? I'll be like, here, read this book by Chris Claremont and John Byrne. It's pretty awesome. You know, I'm not going to say, read the books out now, because I have no idea what the hell's going on with them. They've
how many times have they killed Wolverine, and then how many times have they brought him back?
Yeah,
right?
and they've taken and everybody keeps putting their own spin on everything. So now we don't recognize them. Right. Sometimes my favorite Marvel characters are Misty Knight and Colleen Wing, because no matter when I see them, I just say those are the two characters I know. Nobody's messing with them too much, It's like I look at Wolverine is an example. They pull, everybody keeps putting their thing. There's no guidance other than to keep the license look of something in line so they can make money off the licenses. So I'm hoping mainstream comics become more creator comics. I'm hoping like Image and all these companies, and even the Kickstarters I do, it's like I'm putting out my own books. There's a creator behind it. Remember, the big companies, they don't want you to be so invested in the creators. They want you to be invested in the characters. And what they're forgetting is we're invested in the creators. We look at the artists we like and we buy their books no matter where they go. And we like the writers we like and we buy their books no matter where they go. But they would like it that, I'll say this, like, when's the last time you saw them celebrating the guys at Pixar? Can you name an artist at Pixar? Anybody?
I have allegedly one of my friends from high school now works at Pixar. But I have no clue what he does there.
Get him off this show.
He's trying to prove a point there, Clowns.
He was on a roll, dude, and you just
but what I'm saying is, in comics, we buy creators. I used to buy everything that Frank Frazetta touched, and again, you buy Milestone. You look. PK, you were saying you didn't say Milestone. You not only said Milestone, you said the creators of Milestone. You started naming the guys, Dwayne McDuffie, and all this. These are the guys, and that's what I hope the future of the business is. It's about the creators, and less about these, corporate characters.
But you see, I don't know if we can be that optimistic about that. To be honest, in the mainstream, because I don't think it's going that way. It goes us back in full circle, right? I came into Marvel, and what Jimmy and Joe had done was really create an environment in which, for the first time in a long time, and this is the way I tell other people, to be honest, Jimmy, I'm probably wrong, I don't know, man, but this is how I tell other people. I'm like, look, Marvel had gotten to a point where they were in chapter 11 and they were that close to chapter 7 because Toy Biz was an albatross around their neck. They were going out of business. Yep. And they couldn't sell themselves, and they were gone. And so they went to the last refuge of the creative corporation. They finally went to people like me and said, that wizardy stuff that you do, could you do it for us for a while? And they actually let us create stuff. And I think of some of the stories that I was allowed to write, and just across this time. And then we got to a point and everything was fine. It was right after I'd done Civil War, right? And I did the Civil War Frontlines book. We did 11 issues of that book, and it was really successful. And then we were just about to do the next one, and they said, well, we're going to tell you what you're going to do now. And I went, what happened there? Like, this is a first. Like, why are you going to tell us what stories to write? I thought this was, we're doing great. But no, and that was a year before they sold to Disney, before they announced it. So they knew what was going on. Right. At that point, it went away. It's not about like creativity. It's not about like taking risks or writing some things that are true. And so I remember I went through this situation where I pitched an X-Men story to them. And I really wanted to create X-Men that had disadvantage in society, people who were marginalized by society. So it could be somebody who's homeless. I grew up this way, right? It could be a transgender person, who's it's a metaphor for like secret identities, and someone who's going through transitioning. It's just people that got problems in society. It could be someone who's lost their leg, but they got the speed of the Flash, right? And so how interesting would it be to have an injury if you were the Flash? You'd be like, oh, I've had everything taken away. And what was funny was at the time was that Marvel's editors all were like, I love this. I love this. I want to do this. And then the next thing I would hear is, but we don't do new characters. And I'm like, I create the Sentry. You do new characters. You're just not going to is your thing. So I think that they made their bed at a certain point when Disney came in and went, this is it. This is what we're going to do. Now, are you going to blame them? Because look at the money that they've made out of
No, I'm not blaming them. I'm just hoping for change. That's all.
Right. Yeah, no, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think as Marvel and DC, that's just what they're going to be. They're going to be a homogenized form of entertainment. They're just going to be a formulaic thing. That's what they're going to be. So where's the real stuff? The real stuff is everywhere else, man. Look at what's going on. And in the rest of the world, everything else is mainstream, and superheroes are not the mainstream of comics. So if you go to France or you go to Europe, go to Great Britain, the Judge Dredd stories are completely, or 2000 AD stories are completely different from American comics. They're socially challenging. They're all about stuff. They're about real things that are happening in the world, right? That's where Alan Moore cut his teeth. Brian Boland, all these people cut their teeth on mainstream comics, and superheroes were just a little thing. And then you come over to the States and superhero comics are the mainstream, which makes no sense. It should be stories of crime and like, action and all other genres except for superheroes. We've already done superheroes, but that's not the way it is. So I'm really hopeful. I'm like Jimmy. I'm like, let's go make those comics.
Well, I think something I'm passionate about is on the other side of comics is teaching. I know Paul, he's very besides writing, I believe he's a great mentor to me, but he's also a teacher to other people. And I think the way of comics in terms of where you can go, and so my dad, he worked for Marvel, and what he decided to do was start an art academy to teach kids how to draw comic books. And his way of teaching the next generation was to basically teach kids how to protect their work, because a common pattern within the industry with Paul and Jimmy is they have this amazing work, and work that is not truly protected. It's basically they created it and the idea is no longer there. So what did Paul do? What did my family do? Paul created Meta Studios, and now creating awesome books over there, Fairy Quest. And then with my art academy, my family's art academy, we are basically teaching kids that comics are awesome, right? Like there's things within comic books that for years people would say, oh, comics is not going anywhere. Like we started it in 2005, I believe. And around that time, people are saying, oh, comics are not going to be big. The movies are never going to be, successful or whatever. They never saw it coming. And now look at it. Everybody is very much embracing the comic book culture. And it's thanks to people like Paul and Jimmy who sort of basically are creators, but there's always creators versus I guess the industry, the money, and that's always the damaging part of creation. And it's like always battling creativity with the industry, and that's why places like Kickstarter is awesome, because the creators can pretty much have their creative freedom and get funded for it to make awesome books. So I think that's where the industry is headed right now, and that's where it is right now. I believe it's pretty much creators fighting. My dad's a Mario
Senior.
Yeah, I'm the third. So my dad's a Mario.
Let me tell you, he is a wonderful human being. He's a great guy. When he first opened the art academy, he asked me to come down and help him open it. Remember, I went down there and
yeah
spoke and
he worked up in Marvel though? He worked
Yeah,
with-
yeah.
You did for yeah, and you know what? It's a Mario's Art Academy in Atlanta. What city is it? Is it in East Point?
Yeah, it's
Can't
in
remember.
East Point,
It's in
and
East
we
Point,
have
Atlanta.
two different locations, I believe. I forgot
And what
the
they do
other
is they get a bunch of kids that don't have that opportunity to really go, and they have no opportunity particularly to get immersed in that, and then they get them immersed in comics and creativity, and they tell them yes you can all the time, and it's amazing. It's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, taking kids who don't have the opportunity to learn this stuff, basically like what we did before COVID 2019. We took all those kids and we took them to Pinewood Studios.
That's
Right, they normally would not get that opportunity to go to a movie studio and like, hey, they filmed Avengers here. And the kids are very excited, and
we put them in a play, right? We put them in a thing that was like it was Fairy Quest. It was a haunted forest, and you did the Fairy Quest experience, and basically the kids were like acting in it, and they loved it. They got to be around Pinewood Studios, and they got that thing that really gets those kids to walk in that, to perform, to get a bunch of adults that are all in the film industry and really, really wealthy people that are donating to the thing. And they got to see a Mario's Art Academy, and they got to see some stuff that you had done, the projection stuff as well.
Yeah.
And they got to realize, they got to see that filmmaking is normal and that this is a place that they can be, and they can be. Right, it's only people telling them they can't be there that makes them not go there. Plus, of course, the socioeconomic disadvantage that they're under. And it's like what that did was let them say, listen, you're here and you're working here today, and this is part of your life, and you're going to come here again. So what they do out there is amazing. And I think that we do kind of show in comics that, everybody can do this. Come on in. There's not really that. But historically in the mainstream, there's been this kind of somewhat like push everybody out kind of thing. And so I think that we're in a better place now.
Yeah, I do believe that is the future for comics, and giving creators those opportunities, because you never know what can flourish from that. And I've seen a lot of amazing kids who are talented, more talented than me, and it's just amazing. People always think kids are dumb, and I hate that. I think kids are some of the most brilliant people on this planet, so they are the future for sure.
Not to take away from that awesome, amazing story, Mario, because that is very heart feeling right there, like, to be honest with you. But I wanted to ask Jimmy and Paul, I know that you both mentioned that, basically comics right now, the two major players are corporate comics, which we all know. But are you allowed, though, when you're given a character to draw or write for, are there like requirements? It has to be this way, or is it like kind of loose a little bit where you can, add your own tweaks to it? Like, I remember Todd McFarlane when he did Spider-Man, he changed like the weapon, and that was like a big deal. I remember when you and Amanda worked on Harley like grew to a kind of like a different, more. I thought she was cooler when you guys worked on her compared to what she was previously. So is there that leeway all the time for you guys in the comic industry?
It depends on who you're working for. We were working for Dan DiDio at the time, and there was probably no bigger DC comic fan than Dan DiDio. And when we pitched the idea that Harley would leave the Joker and move to Coney Island and get out of Gotham, and we use the explanation, like, if she stays in Gotham, she's another Batman character. But if we move her to Coney Island, she can have her own supporting crew, and then we can build up who she is and make her her own character. And he was like, well, that sounds great. Do it. I think a lot of it came from nobody cared about the character at the time. They really told us it wasn't going to last more than 6 or 8 issues. And they didn't think it was going to do, they just thought, well, you and Amanda have some fun and we'll see how it goes, It's probably the best circumstances, because when they don't care about something, that's when you have the most room to maneuver. And, it worked out good with Harley. Even like with Jonah Hex, when they gave me Jonah Hex, I said, I want to do them done in ones, and I want to do this and that. And they were like, well, we don't care because nobody cares about this character. So, I've kind of stayed away, like a lot of my career, I've stayed away from the bigger characters because there's less room to move. God forbid you show Bruce Wayne's penis and all of a sudden there's a whole, internet controversy about Black Label and, whatever. Like every little way that you go that that is against the license, then you have trouble. But I mean, look, when we took over Harley, Amanda said no woman wears one outfit. So she kept putting different outfits on Harley every issue. And that was not done in comics. You don't do that. And but it was a reverse thing. Like all of a sudden they realized they can sell Harley stuff with 85 different outfits, and it all says Harley because it has the diamonds and the black and the red. And so of course, you know, us coming up with these stupid ideas then to the license people were brilliant. You know, all of a sudden, you know, you can I remember when we were working on the book, and the Harley Quinn Halloween costume was the #1 costume in the United States. And me and Amanda looked at each other and said, maybe we'll get one.
Yeah.
You know, maybe they'll send us one of the costumes. And you know, that was the extent of us benefiting, other than, you know, a couple of bucks here and there, they would throw a little bonus. But in the reality of looking back on our years on Harley is we probably should have walked away with a couple of $1 million, because that franchise now is, I mean, it's the 4th tier character for the company because of the work we did. Now, we didn't create Harley, right? So that's Bruce and that's, you know, and Paul Dini, but we kind of they gave us enough room to change the character, enough to change the outlook on the character. And of course, Suicide Squad and, you know, these movies come about. So sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes they tell you, no, you can't do that and don't do that. And we don't really want to change the book that way. And then God forbid, Paul, you know this, well, we're going to be doing a company-wide crossover. And that's when I go, I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with a crossover, because that means everything I'm doing gets thrown in the garbage. So
everything you just described is literally this. Give good creators, don't give them freedom, give them creative trust. If you trust them, right? If you give them freedom, it's not really helpful to, you know, I mean, I don't want to just be left by myself. I like to have an editor look at my work and see what there is in there and give me feedback. And, you know, if I'm creatively flying, sometimes there's very little feedback, right? And it's great, we're doing well. But, you know, if you trust the creators, it works out really well. And every time that you don't, right, you get this boring. So Jimmy's totally right about crossovers. I remember working on Spider-Man and the Hulk at one point. I get this phone call from Marvel, like, well, where's the crossover in this? Because I used to do a lot of single issues. And I'm like, what crossover? Turns out they'd forgotten to tell me there was a crossover this month. This was Maximum Security, Jim. Right. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, yeah, there's an alien abduction. They sent me the pitch for the crossover. I read it 4 times. I had no idea what it said. I literally went like, this is the dumbest thing ever. So I wrote 2 issues that had aliens in them and then kind of handed them in and went, like, can I get back to work now? The thing is,
I'll do you one up. We were part of a crossover and they gave us the guidelines. So we wrote it, and it wound up all the other writers decided they didn't want to do it. So our book came out with this random thing going on in the middle of it. Nobody else did it. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? Crazy.
Well, it's great, right? I mean, one of the things that happened to me, and it's very profound because I am a bit of a freaking punk, I suppose. I don't care as much as some other people do. And I remember talking to Bill Jemas at one point, and when he was on his top of his game, Bill Jemas really did a lot of good things. You know, I remember a thing that he had said at one point where he sort of said, you know, I don't want to tell you what to make. You go make what is really good and we'll sell it. And that was just for a very brief period of time at Marvel, and then it went back to the way it was. But for that brief period of time, my God, we were allowed to make really good stuff. And so when you think about that as a creator, like, you're really supported and you can go just write stories that you believe in. And guess what? They all sold. So I got all these single issues that people come up to me even now and they're like holding it in the 2 hands and they're crying. Oh my God, you wrote this one issue about baseball. You wrote this one issue about, you know, this kid or something like that. And it's like, yeah, because they let us make it. And the one thing I said to Bill at one point, this is this editorial conference that I went to, and he said, I've watched you across the room all morning, Paul. I was brought in because I had been an editor with the Ninja Turtles, but I was also a creator that done really well with Inhumans. So they let me come to just kind of consult. And I remember sitting there, and Bill comes to me at lunch and he's like, why are you grumpy all day? I'm like, you're never grumpy. Why are you like scowling? I can see your forehead. You're like really annoyed. And I'm like, honestly, Bill, you're supposed to be the house of ideas. And every time someone comes up with a good one, you say no. Right? And he's sort of like a bit of a punk. And Bill went, you know what? I think you're right. And that's true. You know, like everyone was afraid of getting fired if they did the wrong book. Every Marvel editor was given a pink slip every 5 minutes. It was awful. It was awful to be around Marvel round about the time that Joe and Jimmy came in. So it's a bit like, why don't you empower the creators? Why don't you trust that the creators are good at what they do and stop telling them how to do it? Because if you tell them how to do it, it's just a bunch of nothing. There's no me in some of these comic books that I've done over time. Sometimes they'll just go like, well, we want your name on the front cover, but you know, this is what we want you to do. And it's like, why don't you write it?
We did that sadly on a book once. The editor kept putting his 2 cents became $85. And when we handed in the finished script, we put their name in the credits for writing it first. And
nice.
We got in trouble for that. They were not happy about that.
You know what you guys are missing, by the way, because you haven't got to this yet. So I'm going to ask a question for you because I know how this works, right? What you should always do with comic book creators is say to them, what's the craziest thing that ever happened to you at a convention?
Oh, there you go.
You're missing
it. Okay. What's
the craziest thing?
What's the craziest thing? Yeah.
So I want to say, listen.
He's not going to tell us. He's not going to tell us because there's so too crazy.
I want to hear
Danzig's birthday party in San Diego.
In San Diego, the year that
birthday party, and that's worthy of a single annual, I guess.
Yes.
A 40-page annual.
We can attest to the fact that there was some sexual activity taking place at that party. Yes, there was that.
Everything.
Yeah. It wasn't a furry convention, right? A furry convention. Right?
Might as well have been. And
wait, Paris, went to a furry convention?
No, I was saying, like, have they ever did a crossover event where the comic books go to a furry convention?
We had an Atlanta Comic Con. This is a true story, right? We're at Atlanta Comic Con and we're signing and we're looking up and we're like, all day people are walking past us in like bondage gear. I'm not kidding. Ooh. And so we're like, this is kind of weird. You know, this is different. So at some point, this couple comes past and they're wearing this like flat out bondage gear. And I'm like, can you tell me what's going on? They go, yeah, we have a thing called Phantasm and it happens every year. And it's a bondage, like science fiction bondage convention or something. And we did a reciprocal deal with this thing. So we're at your show and you guys can all come to ours later. And I'm like, we're in. So we went to Phantasm. Boy, was that an interesting night.
Wow. It's all dressing up. I love that stuff. That's fun.
I have a tough question, actually. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, Ma.
Okay, so I know this is tough for creators sometimes to actually decide or come to grips with, but do each of you have a favorite creation of yours? What's the most proud thing that you've ever worked on?
I won't say it's a single book. Like I'll look at things like Event Comics, Marvel Knights. I think I've done 17 Kickstarters. I'm very proud of the fact that I've delivered every single one of them on time and have like 100% rating as far as people being satisfied. I made that up, but nobody's complaining. So, but there's a lot of things. I mean, a single book is tough because you fall in love with some of the books you do because they have a life afterwards, like Painkiller Jane. I loved working on Painkiller Jane. And then a lot of things happen because of the character, but like personal books, like I love this book I did, The Monolith, because I saw that I had so much history in it. And I realized I like writing history more in the book. So it's a really tough question because you kind of fall in love with the next gig all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what creators do. If we sit there and reminisce about past stuff, we don't really move forward. So I gotta say, like, every new book is my next favorite thing. Right now, Sex and Violence Volume 3 on Kickstarter. That's my new
Sorry, Jim, what was that against?
That is Sex and Violence Volume 3. It's on Kickstarter right now. If you want to check it out.
Is that based on the Phantasm experience that y'all had back in the day?
No, Sex and Violence. So I got
there is a story in it based on something that really happened. And then I took it further. Like, and Amanda and I wrote it together because it involved us both. But we took it to a fantastic place. So the roots of the story is based in reality. and then it goes a little crazy. So go ahead, Paul. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I got two actually, if you don't mind. One of them is well, actually, I've got one book that people come to me with all the time, which is an issue I wrote about baseball in Spider-Man, and people come to me holding it, crying their eyes out all the time because it's all about Peter Parker and his uncle. And people have always come to me with that book. For me, there's two. There's I come from a family of pikeys, right? And what a pikey is, it's the first in line to get killed in the war. So 3 of my great-grandfathers were killed in the First War. So one of my favorite books I wrote is Captain America. I wrote Captain America Theater of War, and each of the 4 issues that I wrote, they were big oversized issues. I remember the first time Tom Brevoort was my editor, and he called me up and he said, do you want to write Captain America? Have you got any war stories? And I said, yeah, can I call you back in a bit? And I called him about 10 minutes later and I said, I got 4 of them for you. And we ended up doing all 4 of them. And the first time I told him the story, it was a story about Captain America finding the body of a friend of his who died on Omaha Beach. And he was a really bad soldier. But it was the name of the soldier and the people involved was my next door neighbor, because my next door neighbor was on the USS St. Louis when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And wow. I got a chance to kind of put him in there. And so I pitched the story to Tom, and the phone goes quiet. And he laughed. He let a little chuckle. And I said, I know what you did there. You were going to cry, weren't you? And he said, you bastard. I've done this for 35 years and you just literally teared me up. And I'm like, let's do that book then. That's one of them. The other thing is actually a video game that I created. Similar thing. I created The Darkness for Vivendi Universal. And
yeah, that's one of my favorite 360 games, by the way.
Thank you, man. So thank you. So when I did The Darkness, there's a set in the First World War trenches, and I put my 3 great-grandfathers in the thing. And so what happened was that I got the build when it first came back, and I went and I played it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you go across the trenches and he says, hello, my name is Corporal William Eldridge of the British Expeditionary Force. I'm like, hello, Grandad. So I just hang out with him for about 2 hours. I didn't make the game go any further. I just hung out with my grandfathers. I knew they were going to be in that game for all eternity. So I just hung there, and it was amazing. It was the most profound experience to make a thing that you realized almost like kept somebody alive. So that meant something amazingly to me. I mean, that was just everything to me.
Do you think there's a different between movies or video games and comics or books or whatever? There's different advantages with being able to tell a story between those. What do you think maybe is the best, tool for actual storytelling?
Film delivers, right? Film delivers music. It delivers dialogue. It has its own pace, so you have to follow its pace. Comics, you can read it as slow as you want. You can look at the art. You can flip a page back and go through it. Every one of these things. Video games are an experience. It depends if you're playing it with other people or you're playing by yourself. Again, it's at your own pace, and it's a skill level at your own skill level. All of these entertainments are delivered differently. So I think why I've always liked comics, it's because I can control it the most, I think, or even a novel, the same way I can read it at my own pace. I could pause, I could stop, I could think about it. Or with a comic, I read a comic like 3 or 4 times. So I read it, and then I go back and I read it and look at the art. And then sometimes I just come back and look at the art and see, oh, that's how they got me there. But I think they all deliver your entertainment differently. And I think everybody processes things differently. I think when you're younger, you want things quicker, and that's why video games are aimed at younger people, I think. And although I'm the one that has the Oculus that runs around my house like a nut, hitting walls and stuff. But I think when you get older, more people read. You see older people read. They go to, and it's like because they're controlling the pace of the thing that they're interested in. So I think they each have a different speed. I think they're all wonderful, and they each have an advantage because video games could be. I play video games, and some people go, oh, they don't even want to look at it because it's too much for them. And it's funny because I was playing some game. My neighbor was like getting scared watching me play it, and he's like, I can't watch you play it and he's 15. He's like, I can't watch you play it. It's too creepy, And it's like, so there's like a lot of different deliveries to all these mediums. So I like them all, actually. I got to be honest with you. I'm like I'm like the #1 consumer. People, the world is making money off me because I buy everything. So, I like it all.
In that vein, I kind of sometimes like what's next, I do game design, and I think of all the things I've done, I'm most proud of is probably game work, because very quietly, even though people knew me for comics, I was probably one of sort of 5 or 6 people in this industry in games that was innovating in storytelling. Because what we were told was you can't do that, right? Because of technological limitations. So my answer is, you tell me all the tech limitations and I can write into that. Tell me what I can't do and I'll do everything else. And so that's where the Darkness came from. And I'll submit that I think the Darkness is one of the most emulated games that's ever been done. Everybody took things that we created for the Darkness and put them into every other game. I think that I think, for example, I created the original materials of Prototype, and I think the Web of Intrigue is literally what became Assassin's Creed. I think Darkness became BioShock, and I know it did because I had the same producer on BioShock that was on the Darkness, and we were on different development cycles. And when I saw BioShock, I was like, "You cheeky git," and he's like, "Yeah, well, hey, I'm your producer." So I think I'm proudest of game work. But what I think I like the most at the moment is the NFT stuff that we're doing, because people don't really understand what it is. They think it's just an explosion. If you know anything about NFT, you'll know that Beeple just sold a piece today for $65.5 million.
Amanda just sold a bunch of art NFTs.
Yeah, well, I have an NFT company, so we are. What I tried to do at Tundra Publishing 30 years ago to exist for the benefit of creators is what we're doing with our company. We're going to be a marketplace. We're doing music. We're doing that. We've got this thing called Bitcoin Origins. We just did a sale. We sold out in less than 2 seconds last weekend. Like the NFT space, no one's telling a story except not really. And so I think that we're the storytellers. And so if you can conquer storytelling in any medium, then you're going to do really well. So I love that kind of stuff. I think NFTs are going to be a really valuable addition to what artists and creators can do, because there's a smart contract. So if you put out an NFT, if you program it correctly, then you're going to get paid royalties for the duration of that thing. And if it gets resold, you'll get 10%. If it gets resold again, you'll get 10%. So it's a mode of art delivery that's going to exist for the benefit of creators.
Did you said you wrote Prototype, the game Prototype?
Yeah.
I did the comic book.
Did you really?
I wrote that. But I wrote a lot of video games too, right? I don't know. I don't talk about it very often. I worked on Injustice. The first
great game.
Fire.
The story is great in the Injustice games. Actually, they heavily rated. Nobody talks about that, but the story is great.
Great game.
Well, we did a great job. So good on the first one that they didn't hire us for the second one. But the first couple I did was the Punisher and Ghost Rider way back when Marvel Knights. Out of Marvel Knights, Garth and I wrote the Punisher game. That now it's so outdated, but it was a fun thing. But I also wrote the Dead Space animated movie, which went with the game.
Oh wow!
Nice. Did that for EA Games. I don't talk about it too much because I think I did work in games, but they used to pay royalties, and now they don't. And then it changed. Like the whole, no matter what I did, like even like Mortal Kombat versus DCU. Like the second one, they don't hire you. They want you. All your ideas for the first one is great. Injustice made them $1 billion, and then the second one comes along and we got it now. We got it.
What was I gonna say? I had a question on. Oh man, it just slipped my mind. Why
do bad things happen to good people, Jim?
What's that?
What?
Why do bad things happen to good people, man?
I don't know if it's a bad thing. I think it gives a whole bunch of other guys a chance to do it. So I'm like,
there you go. I was gonna say because they
I just looked up that $69 million NFT sale. That's insane.
So we live in that space, and it's getting bigger every day.
You have your digital wallet. You got your, like I said, Amanda just sold a couple of pieces.
Well, give me a shout, dude, because we're building out a marketplace for you and Amanda and everyone for it. That's part of what we're doing. So we're building that out. Because the programming of it is the heavy lift in some ways. I know that I think people think they can put art in a digital form and then sell them as NFTs. And 4 people can. Ferocious and Beeple and a few other people, everyone else, you need to get the programming done right and the stuff put out, and and you're not going to get on nifty gateway. So I think a lot of what we're doing is to build something that really benefits, and because I was trained at Tundra Publishing to benefit creators, that's kind of where I'm coming from. So.
Right, I'm hoping they to mine them. That's like the energy is going to be less. They're thinking coming up with new ways to.
Even that's misunderstood. So yeah, sure, it costs a lot to mine Ethereum and Bitcoin, but if you're on the flow chain, the flow have literally solved it for that reason. So I mean, it's not one thing, like flow, or I think Wax are doing better. Like there's a lot of places where there's not a lot of energy to mine. So it's not so bad.
We're gonna lose everybody here, Paul. So
sorry.
No, it's okay. It's interesting that
do you remember what you?
It's so interesting.
You asked their clowns. Did you remember?
I do. So,
okay.
Jimmy, you said that you wrote the Punisher game.
Yes.
Now, when I think of the Punisher game, I go back old school. I think of like Punisher on Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean that's it's not the simple one where he's just standing there doing it. Garth and I wrote it after we did the Marvel Knights Punisher book. I think it was Take Two Games. I want to say that was the name of the company. And we, they asked Garth, what happened is they asked Garth to write it, and they say, do you play video games? And Garth said, yeah, I play Mrs. Pac-Man.
Enough.
They're like, is there anyone else you worked with? And he says, well, Jimmy plays video games all the time. And I'm like, okay. So we went in and, we pitched the whole story and the whole thing. And it's based on the book that Garth and Steve and I worked on. The game is, but I mean, it's like, it has whole levels where you torture people to a certain level, and you can either kill them or get information from them. It's so brutal. it's so crazy. But it was a really fun game. And, it's when the stuff was a lot simpler. Obviously, if we did it now, of course, it would be like, spectacular, but there was something about that very basic digital format that was pretty cool with the game. And I still sign them at cons. I get the games all the time, and people pull the cover out and can you sign it and everything. And I'm like, oh, okay. I said, I think, I don't even know what format. I have one somewhere. I have one of everything somewhere. I just don't know where.
Probably PlayStation 2 then.
One or two, yeah.
Probably 2, yeah. I did, I've done all these games, right? And I wrote on Soul Reaver. I don't know if you guys know the legacy of Cain, but I wrote on some of Soul Reaver
games.
And,
we need another one.
Those are pretty groundbreaking stuff. I was always like trying to push the buttons and trying to make new things happen. And the one game that is the coolest is that I wrote the Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. And all you do is just smash stuff up. It's got a story in it, but really what you want to do is to grab a giant purple gorilla from a car dealership and run up to the top of the building, and then you jump off and it floats, and now you float around as the Hulk on a giant purple gorilla. It's awesome. It's the most fun you can ever have.
I remember when we were writing Injustice, I pitched a side story where the Joker steals the Batmobile and drives it to Metropolis, and how you gain points is running people over. And they were like, there is no way we're doing this. And I'm like, he's a bad guy. Whatever. I was like, this is fun. This is what Joker would do if he's driving from Metropolis to Gotham and back. He would try to run people over. And they're like, nope.
Was that before
you made the game?
Grand Theft Auto came out? Because
it was actually around the same time, but they, again, protect the license, right? Right. So you can't.
It didn't make the game. It didn't get in the game.
No, it didn't get in the game.
Oh man, with the Hulk, they didn't.
It was my homage to Death Race 2000.
With the Hulk, they didn't care, right? They let us do this. They let us. So one thing you can do is you can grab a Volkswagen, you can tear it in half, and then smash it, and now you got metal fists, right? But
but you weren't killing people, were you? Was the Hulk smashing people?
I mean,
you could rip the top off a school bus, right?
Right.
And then you could surf it down the street. It was awesome.
What about the kids in the bus? What happened to the kids in the bus?
Who cares? I'm the Hulk.
So, guys, I wanted to point out something. So I know us on the panels, we all super big fans, right? I mean, Kevin Eastland, Peter Lars, shout out to those guys who started Turtles and got us Turtles fans. And right now they got a good run with The Last Ronin. Please, if I encourage you guys, please check it out. It is fire. But the reason why I bring this up is, since I'm a super fan, you guys are fans too, right? You guys, who would you say is your favorite artist / writer that you guys be freaking out because you guys are super fans of?
I do love Frank Miller. I do love Frank's stuff. Darwin Cook was one of my favorites. You know, he has a good buddy too. He's no longer with us. I just have to look on my wall there.
He's got a list.
I love like Barry Smith, and I love Frank Quietly, and I'm looking at there's an old John Byrne. There's some Neil Adams, Garcia Lopez. I have way too many because I collect comic book art. So I've been buying art since I was a kid. I have Kirby and Toth and Wrightson and Frazetta, and you know, I've been buying these things since I was like 12 years old. So I've always been in love with comic book art, and I also collect comics. But I collect mostly Golden Age books, like old books, because stuff that was out before I was born, kind of thing. Yeah, I'm crazy, man. I mean, I told you, I like pay, like everyone makes money off me in comic shops and movie theaters and game stores. Like I am a consumer, you know, to the max. I don't know, Paul, how about yourself?
I think I got exposed to like these. I mean, I was Alan Moore's editor when I was 22 years old, right? And so Alan Moore's, I call up Alan and I say, Alan, it's Paul Jenkins. And he would say the same thing every time. Hello, Paul, what? And every single time, same thing. I called him 10 years after the last time I spoke to him. I said, hey, Alan, it's Paul Jenkins. I haven't spoken to you in a while. He went, hello, Paul, what? So it's so cool because it's sort of like I got to be friends with Bill. I was Bill Sienkiewicz's editor. I was, you know, Dave McKean's editor, Neil Gaiman. I had all these crazy people, you know, just really at the top of the game. And so I never really got to a point, except there was one incident that I had, and I was really surprised by it. And so it was Frank Miller. It was. I did not expect this at all, right? So I wouldn't have thought that Frank Miller would know who I was. And Frank's got his own career and all that. And it was, you know, 10 maybe more years ago. And I ended up in an elevator with Frank. And I just got in, and Frank comes in. And I can't remember, there was a third person that may have worked around them. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool. I've never met him. I'm not really in awe, but I do certainly respect Frank Miller. And I said, hey, Frank, listen, man, I'm sure you get sort of time, but Paul Jenkins, I worked with Marvel for a while. And he's like, Paul, I really like your stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. Not only that was probably the coolest moment, because I normally don't fan over that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that guy knows he knows my name. I was really excited about that. Beyond that, I got nothing.
But that's like, you know, so that stuff happens to us.
Yeah.
You know, even though you're in the business, you get to meet somebody. I went to the Frazetta Museum in Pennsylvania years ago. And Ellie Frazetta, his wife, opens the museum. You have to call ahead of time. And I got to walk through the museum. And I'm talking to her, and you know, she like right before I'm leaving, she goes, you know, Frank's been down a little lately. You have any interest in coming over to the house and hanging with Frank, maybe cheering him up? And I was like, what? I was like, I get that, what? And she's like, yeah, no, here's the address. Come over to the house and hang out with Frank. And yeah, Frank is, you know, I go in there and it's another guy who grew up in Brooklyn, and we're sitting there chatting and we're drinking, and he's showing me some drawings, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I was videotaping or recording this. Like, what the hell? And that to me was like the most surreal thing. And you know, again, yeah, Frank Miller is like one of those guys. I see Frank, I know Frank, we talk, we laugh, we hang out, I take pictures with him, and then I leave and I'm like, oh my God, I was just hanging out with Frank Miller. You know, it's like it never goes away, you know, even more so than actors, because I meet a lot of actors and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But look, there's Frank Miller. You know, it's the comic book fan thing that never goes away.
That is really cool. One thing I wanted to ask you, and maybe Paul has had the opportunity to, I don't know, but Jimmy, the picture that you had sent me for the thumbnail was with you and Stan Lee. Now, Stan is a legend in my mind, man. That guy is a legend. Did you have an opportunity to work under him at any point in your career?
I did. When I first started at Marvel, he was the boss there. You know, and my first official meeting with Stan was I went up and I was bringing in some pages to a couple of editors. I was delivering a couple of books, and I'm walking down the hall at Marvel, and down the other end of the hall is Stan Lee, and he's coming towards me. And it's like the first time I've seen him up at Marvel or anything, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Stan Lee. Do I get out of this hallway? Like, do I run into? Do I get out of his way? Like, what the hell do I do? Stan Lee's walking right towards me, and he's getting closer and closer, and I'm gonna have to go, hello, Stan Lee. My whole brain was exploding, right? It was just like a mess. And then he comes right up to me, puts his hand, and goes, "Hey, Jimmy Palmiotti, it's so nice to meet you." Like that.
Oh my gosh.
I shake his hand, and I'm like, oh my God, Stan Lee knows who I am? Like, what the hell's going on? And we talk for a minute or two, and then we both walk away. And then he turns around, he goes, "Jimmy." And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Come here." And he takes a little photo out of his pocket in his shirt, and he cut it out from Wizard magazine. And he says, "They told me you were going to be up here today, so I cut out your picture so I'd recognize you."
Wow. That's awesome.
I got to say something about that. So one thing that Stan was good at, and I didn't know Stan really well. I had a couple of interactions with him. One was when I got married, and he told me that my wife was too good for me, and he was right. She's too good for me. But the other one was just the coolest thing. It's almost as good as the Frank Miller story, actually, which is, I know he knew who I was, but we were doing the Sentry, and I had created that character. But the whole thing was that it was an old Stan character that I'd found, and that was the way that we sold it, right? Because it's really hard to kind of sell new characters. And Joe Quesada called me up one day, and he said, "I'm about to make your day." And I said, "Okay, great." And he said, "I was talking to Stan today, and we were talking about all the promo for the Sentry, and I was telling him about the Sentry and all that stuff." And he said, "You tell that kid he's a genius." I'm like, what? Stan gave, because what Stan was so good at was making people feel really good about themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that's it. He probably was full of shit, It's probably, sorry, he probably was full of it, right? But he didn't, that wasn't the point. I think the point was that he wanted to make sure, like, hey, well done, that was really cool. That's very Stan, I think.
He did care about people. In his later years, if we were at the same con, they would ask me to go up and do the panel with Stan. So that's where a lot of the photos, if you look online, there's a lot of photos of me and Stan, because I knew Stan couldn't hear very well. And as he said, get Jimmy to help me up on the stage. He's not going to pick on me the whole time. That was Stan's thing, because everybody I guess they would pick on him a little bit. But I've done it maybe like a dozen times with Stan that I honestly could answer every question everybody ever threw at Stan. I know the answer to, because I've done so many of those panels. Why is the Hulk green? Where did the Silver Surfer come from? I know all of this because I've sat through so many panels with Stan. But he was like the ever-ready battery, the rabbit, man. He like, honestly, he would be done with the panel and he'd say, "Come on, walk with me." And then he'd be 15 steps ahead of me, and I'd be running after him. And this is a guy who was 88 at the time, or 89. And that was Stan. He just had a ball of energy. And I swear he was like that Life Force character. When he went to the convention, he would suck the life force out of half the audience in the room and be alive for another year, He was just that kind of guy. What a fun guy who really did care about the books. He did read the books. He did call people when he liked something. He took the time out with a lot of creators because he knew encouraging them, he would get more work out of them, which was just smart business. And just a great guy. I mean, I miss seeing him. He was like a staple in my con circuit,
I do have a question for you then, because actually one of our friends from another podcast, the Iron Lords podcast, calls himself, shout out to Lord Cognito. He's a huge Silver Surfer fan. So if he heard you say that you knew the answer where Silver Surfer came from, I have to ask you, where did Silver Surfer come from?
So Jack Kirby came in with a surf magazine and to Stan, and he said, "Check this out. This is the big thing on the West Coast. Everybody's surfing, and it's surfing music." And he had a whole magazine of guys on surfboards and everything. And I think Jack drew a drawing of somebody on a surfboard. And he said to Stan, he goes, "There's got to be a way we can work this into the book," Fantastic Four at the time. And you know, and then they talked about like a higher power, like he would be under somebody. And, you know, Stan and Jack came up with Galactus and Silver Surfer based on the fact that Jack walked in with a surfing magazine and was trying to come up with, you know, he just saw something that influenced him. And the both of them grabbed the idea and ran with it. Obviously, those 3 issues of Fantastic Four with Galactus and Surfer are just classics. But, you know, it's the same story like with Black Panther. He talks about how he was looking at the way the world was going and why don't kids have a character that's, you know, reflects who they are and, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's basically that it was always a collaboration because he always worked with an artist as well, you know, to visualize his stuff. And Jack was a great collaborator with him. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, I have to say, if you don't mind, folks, I have a really mad schedule, and I'm at least 45 minutes past what I thought we would be.
Understandable.
Yeah, so I may have to head out now, but I just want to thank you for letting me come on with Jimmy because it's really great to see my old mate. He's one of the best people I know. He's a good dude.
Always great to see
Awesome.
you.
All right. Well, thanks for dropping by, Paul.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Paul.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
NFT,
Good night, everybody.
NFT.
So, PK, Paris, Mav, anybody got questions for Jimmy and Mario?
Yeah, I have a question for Jimmy. So basically, with some of the things you've worked on, I know you said you've worked on video games, you've worked on comic books and all these different mediums. Is there something you've really, I guess, took out of all those different experiences, like I guess something that you've learned from maybe video games that you start to apply to your work for comic books, like specifically? Like, can you think of something?
Sure.
Like
I mean, so comics, especially video games, right? I've also worked on films and TV shows and stuff, and you realize that you know, the comic book is your creation. You know, it's kind of clean. If you know, I come up with a book and it's my idea, and I work with an artist and it's our idea. And then all of a sudden, if I'm working at a game company, then it's 200 people's idea. If I'm working on a film, it's 3,000 people working on this thing. So you have to understand that sometimes you create things that become way bigger than you, and you have to kind of step back and let it have its own life, let it breathe a little bit. I think a lot of times creators get so protective that they suffocate their ideas. And I always say, no good creator only has one idea. We have tons of ideas. You can be precious about something, but you have to have it. You have to kind of let it have its own life as well. I've this past summer I had a movie come out called Random Acts of Violence. It was Jay Baruchel and Anthony Williams, and is based on a image comic I wrote with Justin Gray. And Jay Baruchel directed it and co-wrote it, and he kind of changed the comic a little bit. He kind of changed some stuff in it. And I went on set because I was one of the producers, and I went on set and I read the screenplay, and it was a little different. And he was like, he was like a little nervous. Him and the writer, a little nervous that I was up there. And I said, "What's the matter?" And they're like, "Well, we changed some stuff." I said, "Yeah, man, that's cool." I said, "No matter what you do in the film, it doesn't change my comic. So I'm cool with it, man." I said, "My comic's still, you can go buy my comic. It's still the same comic I wrote. I'm looking forward to see what you do in this movie because you're going to take it somewhere I didn't think it can go." And I was really interested in what they were doing. So, you have to come to that realization to understand that, like, okay, man, it's kind of cool. My comic still exists. Why would I get super upset? And again, you have people that are creative that bring something new to a property. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not, but it's always interesting. And if you're working with people that have passion, you have to kind of respect that passion. I remember sitting back with Amanda. We were on a set in Toronto, and there's 40, 50 people fussing around. Somebody spraying a severed head on the floor to make it a little glossier, and there's all these lighting guys. And I just think, and I sat back and I said, I went to Amanda. I said, to think that Justin and I wrote this comic, and now look at all these people fussing over something we wrote. Like, how cool is that? You know, you have to step back and look at that moment and just enjoy it, because whether the movie is good or not, whether the movie makes money or not, that doesn't matter. You know, that of course we want it to make money, of course we want it to be successful, we want people to see it. But my thing is that it even got made was such a gift, you know. And so I kind of like, you know, as you get older, you kind of I started to like understand, like I need to like let stuff absorb things more, slow it down, have integrity, but slow it down, enjoy that moment, you know. We went, I remember also another story, we went to see it was the Birds of Prey set, and we went on set, and the scene where they're inside this roller skating thing and they're fighting everybody, Margot Robbie's fighting, and I don't know if you guys saw the movie, but it's a fun scene. It's very much Batman 66 kind of gone crazy. And at one point, Margot Robbie like does this whole move. She's skating, and and then she sees Amanda and I, and she just like stops everything and skates over to us. And I thought, that's cool. Like, you know, we stopped what she was doing and came over to us and said, "Oh my God, what do you guys think? Is it cool? How do I look?" You know, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm just like the idiot that did comics. Like, what is, you know, it's so cool that I'm even in here and this is, you know, going on." It's like, so again, you know, you have those moments in your life where you have to really appreciate it while it's happening. You know, and it's the thing I learned getting to write a comic a character I love. I should dig in and love it. I shouldn't look at it as a job. I should dig in and say, this might be the only time I write this character. Let me go above and beyond on it. And that's been my attitude with everything I do lately. It's like, give it the best I can. And in order to do that, you really do have to slow things down. You know, it's an easy phrase, right? I know my wife tells me all the time, slow down. And I'm like, okay, you know,
being present
and want to be involved, but we do have to kind of slow it down and really appreciate it. You know, and Mario, I mean, when you see the kids walking on the set of a film and they're absorbing it, you can be in their heads. You can see what they're seeing and how exciting it is. Even if you've seen it 100 times, it's still going to give you some kind of thrill, you know, and that's the kind of stuff that really makes a difference in this job.
For sure. Like I was with Paul and we were at Pinewood and we were borrowing props from WandaVision, and I didn't know it was WandaVision at the time. We were taking like the tree props from our set on WandaVision and like, hey, can we borrow this? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, cool. And me and Paul was basically launching it to another side of the studios. It's amazing. Amazing. Like sometimes you just have to like appreciate things like, wow, this is really cool. I'm on a set, you know, not everybody gets that opportunity. So it's really fun stuff.
Even the 6 of us sitting here talking, it's cool. There's 1,000 other things we could be doing, but the 6 of us, I'm sure there's like 40 other people that wish they can be hanging out in here, and you know, it's nice that they're watching it because it's like they're included. So that is what we have to do with everything these days. The past year has taught us to slow it down and appreciate stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
absolutely.
I want to say one thing here. So I don't want to be selfish, and this has been a very good conversation, a good experience here. You know, I want to talk about your current project. You know, do a little bit of publicity here. So, could you tell us a little more about your current project that you're working on, and maybe we can get some links down in the description for it?
Sure. I have a new Kickstarter out, and it's called Sex and Violence, and it's the 3rd volume we've done. And basically an anthology of short stories done by me, Amanda Kana, Justin Gray, Patrick Wedge, a whole bunch of guys, John J. Hill. We got a lot of great talent in the book. And it's stories done around the theme of sex and violence. So it's not for kids. The book is mature. There's nudity, there's violence, there's language. I say right on the thing, excessive nudity and violence. Please don't buy this if you're, you know, a certain age. It's the 3rd volume we've done. I've done 2 before, Kickstarted 2 before, and they've been really successful. So successful that this campaign, the only shortcoming I have on this campaign is everybody wants the first 2 volumes, but I'm completely sold out of them. That's the thing with a Kickstarter is you only print a certain amount and then that's it. But I do have a pledge level for $15 where I send you guys, anybody that backs it, they get all 3 volumes in the digital. And if you want the actual copy of the book, we offer that. It has a Frank Frazetta cover. I got permission from the Frazetta girls to use a piece that's never been seen before. And that's the Frazetta piece on there. And then we got a sexy Joe Linsner cover. Amanda Connor did a cover. And it's doing well. We hit our goal already. So I'm in the stretch goal stage where we just hit 40,000 and we're just adding some pinups like Dan Panosian and a couple of different artists. Like every time I hit a stretch goal, I'm adding something to the book. So everybody's in on the campaign. The book's going to get a little thicker each time. And, you know, and it's my 17th Kickstarter that I've done over the years. And like I said, we pride ourselves in making sure everyone gets their books and all the books are in good condition. And I answer every message people have on a Kickstarter. And if there's a difficulty or somebody stole their mail, we deal with every problem on earth. And boy, there's some wild problems I have to deal with. But it's a lot of fun. So the Kickstarter is up now and it's live. And the other thing, Amanda and I are writing a 6-issue Red Sonja series for Dynamite. And it's one of my favorite sword and sorcery characters. I love Conan. I love Red Sonja. So we're getting to write Red Sonja in a very classic Roy Thomas kind of style. We're going full on, you know, crazy barbarian slang on everything, and we're having a good time. I mean, it's really violent, it's really crazy, but it's Red Sonja, and Dynamite's letting Amanda and I do whatever we want. And Moritat is drawing it. He's the artist that I worked with on All-Star Western at DC with Jonah Hex, and we also did a book called Killing Time in America together. He's just a fantastic artist. So those are the two main things I'm working on. And then like in fall, Amanda and I have a book coming out, and it's the biography of the band Blondie. And that's like a way out there kind of gig, but I'm a huge fan of the band. I saw them when I was a kid. I used to see them play in the city. So they hired me based on that.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, I look forward to hearing that. That's congrats.
Yeah, we get to work with, Deborah Harry and Stein, and all these guys are all involved in it. It's a monster project, so it's not out till the fall. No.
Yeah, I'm sure. And plus, you want to get it right too, right?
I do. I don't want people to go, that's not true. You suck. Right. You know, I don't want that. I get that every day. I'm sick of that.
I was going to ask a question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Paris.
Yeah. Just real quick. Now that Marvel Studios has officially got the Daredevil character back, from Netflix streaming and all the other things, and your Marvel Knights based on Daredevil was really, really successful and really good. So if they were able to adapt that into, TV film, how would you like that as far as like one of your stories that was really successful?
I would love it. I mean, I definitely, it's Kevin Smith's first big book, so I think it would be great. Joe and I had a blast doing it. I think the comic, it would be the perfect storyboard for a film. Mm-hmm. You get those 8 issues and you can just storyboard them out for a film. I would love that. Anything I've worked on, if Marvel goes in later on and does it, I'm happy as hell. I just want a little thank you at the end.
There you go.
I don't have to shake you down for money. Just give me the nod. Say thank you, guys. No, but it'd be great. I mean, I love the character. I've always loved Daredevil. Even when I was a kid, I liked it. When Frank Miller did it, of course, I was like, okay, this is great. Mm-hmm. And I think Kevin was trying to live up to what Frank did. That's what we all do. We get on a book and try to be better than the guys that were on it before. Of course, it's impossible, but you try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really good. I think it has an opportunity now that he's back, and they haven't really done. I'm sure they're probably looking at it because the Netflix show was really successful.
Yeah, I hope so, man. I hope everything gets done eventually. I'd love to see. I'd love to see a really good Silver Surfer movie that like kind of stuck with. I want to see Misty Knight and Colleen Wing as a Netflix series. I mean, that would be my. I love Misty Knight. Like I not only wrote a miniseries for Marvel, but I actually did a 3-issue Daredevil Misty Knight story where they go to Cuba and I loved writing that because I liked the chemistry between the two of them. She's very sassy, you know, and so yeah, I hope eventually all that stuff gets made, and I think it will, because I think they're seeing how much potential there is with these characters. I think we'll all be hanging on to our last hours of life here, reading about what movie's coming next, and bitching that we're going to die because we're not going to see it.
There you
I think that's the rest of our lives right now.
Somebody in the chat has a question for you, Jimmy.
Sure.
Psychonauts8 asks, is there any one highlight in your career that stands out to you that you enjoy the most? And he also thanks you for everything that you do.
Well, I thank you very much. That's really sweet of him to say. You know, I got to be honest with you. Like, the highlight in the industry I have was meeting my wife, Amanda, because she was an artist I worked with for years before we got together as a couple, and she's just making the ride that much more fun. You know, we're working together on books together, and she's so brilliant. She's a brilliant artist and kind of clever and funny and a wonderful storyteller. And I think that's like that's probably number one. Like that was like, I feel like I won the big prize meeting her. She got stuck with me. Like, I definitely did much better. Like, she got something from the lower rack at the gift, you know, for getting the ball in the hoop. But I definitely got the big prize with her. Yeah. So that would be my peak moment, I think.
Well, my wife's watching in the chat, and she liked that. She said, "Aw," with a big red heart for you.
Oh, it's true.
you won some brownie points there, probably.
There you go.
So good job.
So,
well, Matt, you can tell us about how you met your wife and how wonderful she is.
Oh yeah, well, we'll go into that on our podcast one day.
Be careful.
The world is watching you, Mav.
Yeah,
he's watching you. So that leads me to the next question, Jimmy. Okay. I wanted to ask you before I forget. How did you? I know that you said you worked with Amanda for a while, but how did you actually, I guess, meet for the first time, like face to face, or?
Yeah, we met face to face. So I was working for an editor at Marvel, Hildy Mesnick, when I first started up there, like 93, 94-ish. And she asked me to come in. She had some inking work for me, and it was a cover for a book called Gargoyles, which was these Disney, based on a Disney animated show.
I love that
Amanda
show.
was drawing the book and doing the covers. Show. And she needed a couple of covers inked, and Amanda was there in the office and literally handed me the piece, the ink, and you know, we chatted. I mean, when we met, you know, she was married. I had a girlfriend. You know, it was just like, oh my God, there's how many female artists are there in this business? 4, you know, and she was pretty amazing. And they were giving her a lot of books that were like I want to say what they thought a girl should draw. So she did Barbie, she did Gargoyles, she did some Archie. And at the time I was talking to the guys at Harris Comics, were doing Vampirella. And I said, you know, you guys should hire this Amanda Connor, because not only can she do great, sexy girls, but her work is pretty dynamic. And Amanda went in for an interview, and yeah, she got the work for Vampirella. And of course, I attached myself as the inker on all of Amanda's work. So I got some more work for me. But the year she was there, she worked with Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison, and Mark Millar were her 3 writers. So all of a sudden she's doing this Vampirella book, and it's this sexy girl, and then she's drawing it, and people are like, wait, a girl draws this book? Like, what? You know, again, this is in the mid 90s. There wasn't, it was Colleen Duran. There was like 4 other, Jill Thompson. There wasn't that many female artists. And, you know, and we became really good friends, you know, and then our lives changed. You know, our marriage went whatever way it went. Whatever girl I was going out with at the time wasn't working out. And I like one day we just kind of looked at each other like, hey, you know, I don't even, I like to say she attacked me on the beach, but that's not true. But we definitely were in heavy like with each other. And then we just took the leap eventually. But we did meet me inking her artwork. That's how we met. And we just became really good friends. So I think it was meant to be in a way, because, you know, you don't get that opportunity when you meet a girl to know them for years as a friend, as just somebody, you know, that you hang out with. So it definitely gave an advantage. Like she knew how much of an idiot I could be. And I knew plenty about her. And so when we got into the relationship, it was just that much healthier and easy, I guess, you know, comfortable.
Oh, that is really awesome. And I mean, that's just a fantastic story.
Nice. There you go. So I'm sure she's back there listening going.
What's this beach nonsense, right?
I want to say that Jimmy, if you down, I definitely got some questions offline. I want to hit you up about a lot of your stories from the I call it the golden age of comics back in the 90s. But definitely I enjoyed these stories and everything. Unfortunately, I don't think we can go on forever, can we, there, clowns?
No, I mean, we hit the 2-hour mark, and I feel bad for Jimmy. I do feel bad for him.
I had a bit to eat before I got on, so I figured if it went longer, we can go. Once I saw Paul, I'm like, okay, this is going to be involved now.
That was great. Hearing y'all back and forth was absolute pleasure. Like hearing these stories, it's exactly what I hoped would happen when Paul is Amario's boss, right? So when he said, "Oh, I wanted to see if he could get Paul on with this show," it was just a dream come true.
He's always jumping around
these kind of conversations,
and he never sleeps.
Yeah.
Paul never
he's like Paul's got that, like every time I see him, he rattles off the 85 things he's doing, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I always go, yeah, but how you doing? Like, how you doing? You know. But he wants to conquer the world all the time, and I admire that. You know, I definitely slowed down a little bit. He still has that drive. He's still like looking to reinvent the world all the time, and that's great because people feed off that energy, you know.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question from Graphic God. Could we do that really quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Graphic God says, hearing about all of the amazing characters and stories you were fortunate to work with, was there ever a character or story you always wanted to write but never did? So that's from Graphic God.
I get that a lot. You know, I actually did a checklist not too long ago of every character I ever wanted to write, and I think I actually did. Like, I was trying to find one, you know, and I think, you know, once in a while I'm like, well, maybe I want to write Hellboy, and then I'm like, no, I don't. That's Mike Mignola's. Like, Mike should write Hellboy. You don't want me writing that. But I think I've written every DC and Marvel character, and I got to be honest with you, like, it wasn't until recently because they did these. Remember those Walmart 100 books, those 100-page Walmart books that they came out with? I actually got to write Batman stories, Superman stories, and Wonder Woman stories, and that was like so cool because I'm like, all right, I never did those, like just straight superhero, you know, stuff, and I wrote a bunch of those, and I checked off the list. I think I would like to be a guest on some other characters, but I honestly, I'm checking off my list. Like Red Sonja is another one. Like, check, done it. You know, at one point I thought James Bond, but they do the James Bond comics and it doesn't look like the actors. It has to be this generic James Bond, and I'm like, nah, I don't like that. I want to write like a Sean Connery James Bond, and I thought and this is my age showing, but I always wanted to do a Dirty Harry comic, you know, Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry comic set in San Francisco in the 70s, and just keep writing that crazy, out of control cop thing, like so. But you know, I'm making these things up. These aren't things that are available for me to write, you know. But I do love my films, so I'd love to build on some film. I pitched to Warner Brothers years ago. They own a huge library of movies, and I said, why aren't we doing comic book continuations of some of the movies? And I pitched Dirty Harry, and I pitched a bunch of things they had, and they're just like, no, they just no interest in it. So I was like, okay, you know. I'm the guy at the end of the movie that wants 5 minutes more all the time.
All right.
You
know? Yeah.
Well, if they want to get HBO Max up, that would be the opportunity for them to do something like that.
One day I'll be dead, but they'll do it.
Howard the Duck too, right?
Yeah.
You know it's gonna happen, man.
I hope so.
It's gonna be done like a Pixar CGI thing, and it's gonna be fantastic. You know.
Right.
I'll watch it.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah. No.
Did anyone else have questions for Jim before we get out of here?
I I think we held up this man long enough.
Yeah.
It's so good. It was a pleasure, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Well, I want to thank you so
Awesome.
much, Jimmy, for coming out and sharing your stories. And I mean, just to get that insight, you know, we as fans don't really get to know what goes on behind the closed doors. And it was really cool to hear your experience with Stan and other creators and how you met your wife. It was just like some of the stories are just mind blowing and it's just so cool. It just seems like that a lot of creators behind the scenes are just so genuine. You know, even though it's like corporately owned, like comics wise, it just seems like there's so much creativity there and there's so much opportunity. And I just hope, you know, in the future, we see more creators be able to put more of their stories in these corporate comics or change them just a little bit more so that they can resonate more with us going forward.
We're in corporate America, man. Corporations are part of our life. When we shop, when we do everything, you know, you just have to learn to roll with them. I just like to issue some warnings. So when people do work for them, don't expect a ton of royalties, or don't expect undying loyalty. Understand that you're just doing a gig. And comics are a gig. And until you do your own comics, it's a gig. But it can be a fun one. So that's my message.
I think it does leave a lasting mark that you can be proud of, whether you own it or not, because a lot of stuff that you have created, you get to see so many young kids now and other people get to enjoy that, whether you get the credit for it or not.
Right.
You know that you have created that, and the story that they used in this movie comes from your writing and that people are enjoying. And I think that, I hope for you at least, it brings a lot of enjoyment to see.
It does. Until I'm the crazy old guy only wearing a robe and slippers running down the street going, no, that's based on my book. Until that happens, you know, we're all good. But no, I absolutely do. I mean, my stuff I've done for Marvel and DC, I'm extremely proud of. You see me at a con, I sign it with a smile. I'm happy to see that you enjoyed it. The person enjoyed it. You know, it's all great. This is a lovely job with lovely people. So no complaints, man. No complaints.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks so much, Jimmy.
All right, guys.
Really appreciate it, man.
Oh, you take care, everybody. And I'm gonna check out. Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right. Take care, guys.
All right. Thanks, Jimmy. So before we get out of here as the panel, Mav, I mean, you do some fantastic shows. So why don't you tell everybody about what you've been up to?
We're just still growing the channel over Fun Speculation on YouTube. We started Fun Pop, the pop culture movies, TV show, comic books, video games, podcasts. We got 3-Bit on there, as well as Psychonauts, and that's on Sundays at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we just did our 3rd episode. So we got episode 4 coming up. We also have Xbox Ultimate, which is going to be episode 32, which is Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Fun Speculation YouTube channel as well. This week is going to be a lot of fun because of this whole Bethesda crazy thing. I mean, we're going to be talking about entering into the golden age of gaming over the next decade with Xbox, and I am super excited about everything we're going to be talking about. There's going to be a lot of speculating going on, that's for sure. So it's going to be a blast. And again, we got 3-Bit on there. We got Pong Soul. We have my wife Caitlin is there as well, and a new panel member, Psychonauts, who is going to be joining us every week. We have some awesome guests this week as well. Then here as well, guys, 4 Guys with Quarters every Thursday. Get to hang out with Clowns, where he books these amazing guests and do awesome stuff. And on Twitter, find me at Fun Speculation. And send me a DM if you want to chat or whatever. Hit you back up. I appreciate all of you guys for tuning into this show. It's been a blast, and everybody here on the panel. Dude, this was a lot of fun. This was a heck of a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Fierce, for that super chat. I have no clue what you typed in there, but hippo character with a pink hat. No,
is that me?
I'm lost.
He's turned the hat backwards. Is that me?
Yeah,
I
he's
think
just
so. I think so. PK, where can people find you?
So before I say all that, I just want to thank Paris for coming through, man. Hey, look, man, I appreciate it. It feel like the Avengers did assemble in the background. You know what I mean? We assembled today. Good energy, good questions, good conversation. Definitely, you can find me here every Thursday. Four Guys of Quarters is one of the panel members. You can find me at GRG every Friday. And definitely on my channel, PK Entertainment. I'm finally back off of my hiatus and I'm creating new content. Just dropped my first video in a long time. Please come by and check me out. I'm definitely trying to push the culture forward as usual. And like I said, just here to have fun, man. If you definitely want to, shout out and have a conversation on Twitter at PKX Live, definitely hit me up. We definitely can get down on some gaming or anything you definitely want to get down into.
Awesome, man. And I'm gonna let Paris go last because he's got some amazing stuff on Facebook. But Mario, where can people find you? You're mostly known as 3-Bit, but today you showed up as your Clark Kent.
Yeah, my real name. Everyone can follow me on my YouTube. It's the Video Games HD. I have a Bethesda video I'm animating right now, so we'll see if I can finish it tomorrow or maybe tonight. We'll see. I podcast every Thursday on Boom's show. We did a crazy show today. There was a lot of people in there. It was very lively because of what happened today with Bethesda. And you guys can find me on Mav's show every Friday on Xbox Ultimate. It's a great show. Really enjoy that. And then Fun Pop. My other stuff with like what we talked about today with like Paul and all that different stuff, you guys could go to Meta Studios and check out our work over there with Paul. And a little self promotion for Paul there. And then my family's art school, Mario's Art Academy, where we teach kids how to create comic books from grades 3 through 12. And it's great. I teach animation classes over there. My whole family teaches there, and we get great experiences with people in the industry and give people a chance to do stuff like this. And it's awesome. So yeah, that's where you guys can follow me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming here, and I know that getting Paul on the show would not be possible without you, so I want to thank you for that. You have definitely helped out the show a lot, and your experience in the industry as well is amazing to know, especially your father, your family's art studio. All of that is just, it's like stuff that most people probably did not know about you before. They just saw you as 3-Bit, the Halo tournament guy, but now they know a little bit more about you. And Paris, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I mean, it's been a real pleasure to have you here. You know that I followed you for a long time, and I look up to you as well for the work that you do, man. So I want to give you the last chance to, do your shout out and tell everybody where they could find you and your group.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at PLock77. I also run a Marvel Cinematic Universe group. We cover comics, we cover movies, we cover TV shows, we cover almost everything Marvel. We have 528,000 members, and I have another 1,500 to approve. I got to figure out who these people are. Awesome. Yeah, so I'll be continuing to be on those platforms. I just changed my gamer tag from the Lock77 to Locky Charms, so you can catch me on Xbox at Locky Charms. I'm down to play any games that we can possibly play. Stay tuned for xCloud as I work on the xCloud team. So there's going to be a lot of fun things coming from Xbox and that space. Once we get there and I can start talking about some of the things that we're doing, it'd be awesome.
Do you like apples?
Cannot wait to such. What's that?
Do you like apples?
Do I like apples?
Yeah. I'm trying to skate around the
apple.
Xbox.
Oh, I don't think you can. I don't think you
I don't know if you can just
Mav.
tell me if you like apples or not. You know.
Yeah, we'll see. There's some things coming from them. So, like Phil Spencer and the rest of the leadership has said, is that we'll be on iOS, and that's something to stay tuned for, right? So, I cannot wait to share all that stuff once we get there. Yeah. So as far as that goes, I love the show. This was awesome. Thank you, clowns, for inviting me. Nice meeting everyone. Nice chance to understand more and learn from everyone on this call. Interviewing those two, man, that was awesome. We just let them go. I was like, just let them go.
Yep.
So much content, so much, you guys rock for putting this together, man. They dropped some knowledge. I don't know when people rewatch this stream and listen to that. I mean, that's priceless stuff, man.
He has some crazy stories. All the time he just drops like, oh yeah, I met this person. I'm like, what? So he's crazy.
Just the stories behind the creation of some of the characters, and the background of who deciding how to write something and all that stuff is just mind blowing.
Yeah, it feels like a part 2, part 3 show. You guys, these great, especially Jimmy, right? Like, clowns, great job putting him in here too, because hearing him and Paul go back and forth is just very cool to see. Those creators who obviously have so much to bring to our industry, getting to talk to each other like they're just, like they're just bantering, and it's great. That was really fun. So thanks for inviting me, and everybody, Paris, PK, you guys are awesome. Mav, you already know, and clowns, thanks for inviting me.
PK, send me your links.
Before we get out of here and shut the stream down, I know that now that you mentioned WandaVision and Pinewood Studios, there's probably people in Paris's Facebook group that's like, what WandaVision? What the set? You were on the set? Yeah,
they probably had no idea. I mean, I already said it, so
you just dropped.
It was like, what?
I said, no, you just dropped it on the show like nonchalantly, and people are probably going to be like so excited about that because WandaVision is like the hottest thing right now on TV.
Clouds, you have no idea. I talk to him all the time. We talk all the time, and he just randomly says stuff sometimes, and it's just like, what?
You're like, what? Yeah.
It just blows my mind. It's crazy.
Yeah, that was a really fun event.
You're probably gonna get 1,000 Mephisto questions then. What is going on with Mephisto? Did you take Mephisto?
Who knows?
Well,
who knows?
To everybody in the chat, I want to thank you guys for coming out. And like I said, this show would not be possible without this amazing panel. I always give credit to the panel because the panel is the most important part of any show. So everybody on here, this show was very important to this. And I want to thank everybody again, and see you guys next time.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
PK, send me your links.